And it is Sunday again, right? But I know everyone, anyone that's watching, they're probably looking like, man, where's Ira? Well, guess what? He's away on business. He's looking at houses with his lovely wife, Amber, all right, aka silent partner. That's what we call her, right? Because she handles a lot of the back end stuff. But in light of that, I decided to bring on Mr. Isaiah Kitt from the Isaiah Kitt podcast. What's going on, man? How you doing?
How you doing, Kenneth? How you doing? I'm excited. I remember when you were posting this, you were kicking it off, you were kicking the podcast off, rooted in sports. So I'm just glad to be a part of it. I'm glad that you called me up. As a fill-in, I take it. I take it any way I can get it. But no problem. I'm just excited to talk about these topics that we have today. So let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Yeah. So you heard him mention topics. All right. So today's topics, we're gonna be talking about. We got some March Madness updates, a little something. We're gonna be talking about the Memphis Grizzlies because somehow they're number 2 in the West and nobody's talking about them. Right. No, obviously, John Moran's an MVP candidate, and then of course I'm a football guy, so I gotta rooted in football is back, and we'll be covering the NFC East. All right. I think we may have somebody on here is a Cowboys fan, so we'll see what happens. So that's going to be pretty exciting to talk about. But before that, let's get into that trusty, that lovely intro that we pay so much money for. Ooh, doesn't it just have a ring to it, right?
It does.
All right. So obviously getting into it, like I said, I got Isaiah Kitt on the show. So Isaiah, let's talk about a little bit about this March Madness, right? Obviously now the Final Four is decided, so it was just Duke, North Carolina. I think that's the first time they've been in the Final Four together.
And they're playing against each other.
Right, and they're playing against each other, so that's going to be exciting. And then we have Kansas and Villanova, right? But to me, there were 2 games that were very instrumental in the tournament going this way, and that was the Gonzaga loss and the Arizona loss, right? 2 upsets, number 1 seeds. All right, they lost to Arkansas and Houston respectively. What are your thoughts on those games? What went wrong?
So I tell you this, I'm really I haven't talked much about the March Madness and college basketball on my podcast, but I do point out and say different things on my socials. And I tell you this, Houston and Arkansas are 2 of the most physical and gritty teams in college basketball. And it's kind of, I think college basketball now, it gets somewhat of a bad rep, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of the skill level, because we're just so amazed and in awe of the guys at the NBA level. Mm-hmm. And we frown upon really good college players, like 2, 3-year, 4-year guys. We frown upon them in terms of like NBA prospects. But I tell you this, Houston. Well, going into both games, let's just start with Gonzaga. For the last couple, Mark Few's a great coach. Let's get that out of the way. Mark Few's a great coach. What? No, go ahead. What you gonna say?
I was gonna say he's made them relevant.
He's made them relevant.
He's made them relevant.
Mark Few, he's in terms of relevancy and sustained and consistent winning on a year in, year out basis. He's done that. Mm-hmm. I think often Gonzaga just has this stigma where it's like in the tournament, their conference, some people, a lot of people frown upon the conference that they play in. And then in the tournament time during March, that's where we see the upsets. But in terms of Arkansas taking down Gonzaga, Arkansas doesn't have the versatility nor the weaponry that Gonzaga had. So like if a game was played in the high 70s, 80s, Arkansas wasn't going to win that game. Right. They just weren't going to win that game. And I'm looking at Arkansas. I watched, and I didn't even know this was going to be a topic, but I watched somewhat both games, and I would say that the physicality of Arkansas and Houston really disrupted the high flying offenses of Arizona and Gonzaga.
Oh,
That's
100%.
that's what really did.
100%. Yes.
And I made this point on an episode coming up that I'm releasing next week. This week I should say. Sunday marks a new week, but I often say, and over the past couple of years, people always ask me and wonder why Big Ten teams struggle in the tournament. As you like last year, Big Ten teams struggled, and then this year, a lot of Big Ten teams got beat in the first round or round of 32. They didn't make it past Sweet 16. Not a lot of Big Ten teams made it past Sweet 16. So, and I had, and one of my arguments that I hold true, I don't care what nobody says. In a tournament, smart guard play, coaching, that's what essentially wins. And you're looking, and I feel like when you see those Big Ten teams, they usually have a dominant big. Big, they have this dominant big, and you play the offense through them. And similar enough, even though Gonzaga and Arizona are not Big Ten teams, but in recent years and in years past and now, they have had bigs where their offense is centered around. And
exactly.
I don't think, me personally, in today's March Madness climate, if you're seeing what's winning of late, that's not what wins. And Drew Timme, really good poster, really good player.
Really good player.
And then Chet Holmgren, I think, is a really good NBA prospect.
Right.
But they're bigs. And usually when you see offensive teams that's predicated around their big, they usually don't have success in March Madness because the guard dictates the pace and the tempo of the game.
And it's funny that you say that. One, Ira says it all the time. He says for you to win in college basketball, especially when it comes to the tournament, you have to have great guard play.
Yep.
Right. And you look at Arizona and you look at Houston. Okay. Not Arizona. You look at Arkansas and you look at Houston. And Arkansas, JD Nate, 21-6-6. Yep. All right. You look at Houston. Right? Was it Jamal Sheed? He had 21-6-4. Right. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So these teams, they play great defense, especially Houston. Oh my God. I was watching that game like, Jesus Christ.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, they pair great defense with great guard play.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, especially for Gonzaga. I think you hit it right on the head. They're a team that kind of plays inside out. And I'm not going to say that it was just crazy because you would think that since they play inside out, they'd be a little bit more physical. But when I watched that game, Arkansas was the more physical team, man.
It wasn't even close.
It wasn't even close. And because Arkansas isn't as talented.
Yeah.
They're not as talented.
They're not. Go ahead.
Oh, no. All I was going to say is that, you mentioned Drew Timme and you mentioned Chet Holmgren. When I was looking at the stat, I watched the game, seen the highlights, and really outside of Drew Timme, they really didn't get anything points wise. Chet Holmgren had 11 points, which I think, by the way, quick segue, I think that game is gonna make people view him differently coming into the NBA draft. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
So, but no, like I said, I think that they were a talented team, but they couldn't get little to anything outside of Drew Timme, and he scored 25 points. And I don't think anybody else was in the double digits outside of Chet, and Chet had 11.
And he was in foul trouble. It's important to add. Yeah. He fouled out about 5 minutes left in the second half. So he was in foul trouble, and people can say, hey, the call was debatable, so forth. But as you alluded to, Houston, I think, has a little bit. I think the talent margin is a little bit closer with Houston and Arizona than it was with Arkansas and Gonzaga.
Yeah.
And you hit it like with Gonzaga, they usually typically, like, even with the dating back to like the Kelly Olynyk days, they play inside out. And you would think it's just so funny that their bigs are more, they're not like physically dominant.
They're finesse guys. Yeah.
They're finesse guys. And that's what really comes back to bite you. But I think the guard play with Houston, and people know I'm huge on the Houston program, and what they are doing. I think they're doing an excellent job in Houston. If you look at the last couple of years, they've had some really deep tournament runs, and I don't think that's coincidental. I think there's an identity, and there's like somewhat of a recipe that they had there in Houston.
Well, I think the big thing is it's more of a pride thing. I don't know if you know anything. Houston, they keep a lot of guys home. A lot of those guys that play for that program are from Houston or from
Okay.
other surrounding cities. Right? There's a kid that, if I'm not mistaken, that plays at my alma mater, and he just signed on to go to Houston, up in Beaumont. So, like I said, they keep a lot of guys home, and they really have that Texas pride, and they got some big kids over there, man. Some big physical kids. So that's how Houston's building their program.
I absolutely like it. I think Calvin Sampson, he does. I think he's 700 wins.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's at 700 wins. Like you said, I mean, he's keeping the kids in state. That's important. That's always important.
That's big for any program, by the way.
Any program, in terms of college football and college basketball. In terms of recruiting, keeping the guys in state. That's what matters. Like that's what counts. So I think I think Houston, they just do a hell of a job. I think you hit it right there. The guard play was the difference in both games. I feel like I thought Gonzaga guards, they were a little sloppy with the basketball. I don't have the exact turnover amount or turnover battle. But I know it leaned in Arkansas's in favor.
Hey, look, Gonzaga, they had guards on the court.
It was hard to tell.
They had some guards on the court, man. I would have noticed.
And I think even though it led to them losing last year in the national championship game, but I think Jalen Suggs being because that was a bit weak. That was a bit different.
Right.
From Gonzaga's style. They didn't have an NBA
caliber guard,
lottery pick type of guy.
Which is why he was so big for them. Right. Okay.
Right. And that's why they made their deepest run ever. They got to the national championship game, and they fell short to a Baylor squad that had better guard play. So I think that's what it ultimately comes down to in March Madness. If you're looking at the teams that have advanced to eventually to the Elite Eight and then to the Final Four. That's the consistent thing. Great coaching, and solid guard play. Because they control, the guards. They control the tempo of the game. They control the pace of the game, and your bigs are easily susceptible to get into foul trouble because you're banging down low, whatever. So I think having tremendous guard play, I think, goes a long way in winning or trying to win in the tournament.
And another thing is funny, when you assess both games, I mean, obviously the result was similar, but the games went a little different. So you look at Arkansas, when Arkansas played Gonzaga, first of all, I'll show Gonzaga a little bit more respect. They didn't lay down, right? It was a fight. It was a fist fight. Drew Timme did everything he could to keep them in that game. And you saw early on they had a big lead. They had an okay lead early, and I think they were up by like 7 to 8 points. A sizable lead, right? But one thing about Arkansas, they were resilient. They didn't give up. Like they didn't give them any breathing room. They played defense. They put bodies on them all game. And obviously towards the end, they were able to wear Gonzaga down and kind of come out with the win. What did I say? The ending score was 74-68. So it wasn't far. It wasn't like a substantial win, but they came out the victor because they stayed resilient.
Right.
Man, you watched that Houston, you watched that Houston Arizona game?
It was a landslide.
From the beginning of that game, Houston dominated. And they were up 8 points, 10 points, 12 points, I think.
I think they won. Eventually, they won by 12, I think. 72-60. So
74. So I think it was
74.
Yeah, it was somewhere up in there, but it got pretty ugly. But that Houston game, that was the definition of, how they say in sports, put your foot on their throat.
Yeah.
That's what Houston did to Arizona.
That was that.
And you saw it was sad to watch because it wasn't like, it wasn't like Arizona didn't try. I know they had what's the kid, the guard name? Is it Dale? I forgot his name. I don't know how to say it, how to pronounce his name, but he tried. Yeah, he had about 17 points. right? And they had 15 points from another guy. But the truth is, they couldn't score consistently, and they couldn't stop Houston at all.
Yep.
And obviously Houston's two guards. I mentioned Jamal Shee, but Kyle Edwards, he gave them 19 points as well. Mm-hmm. So it was
26 turnovers.
26 turnovers, right? Yeah. And their bigs were playing physical. Oh my gosh! So it was interesting to see two number one ranked teams, because I can speak. I got my bracket right next to me. I had Gonzaga and Arizona meeting in the championship.
Oh wow! Okay,
I did. Yeah. So I mean, that's how substantial it was. Yeah, I can speak for myself.
I see.
So yeah, my bracket's done. Oh, and my I was being, even though I'm a USC guy, I wanted to be loyal to the soil, and I rooted for UCLA, but that didn't work out. They lost to North Carolina, who's in the Final Four, right?
In North Carolina, I must say, I know we're talking about the Zags in Arizona. North Carolina, it's funny. We have 4 blue bloods in the Final Four. North Carolina has caught some steam over the past month or so. Duke has been really consistent overall throughout the season. Had a couple conference losses to North Carolina. Right. So Kansas has been consistent, and then I watched the Villanova game, and it was just like it was an ugly game, but it was like a classic tournament March Villanova game.
Villanova is such a well-coached team.
So well coached.
They're composed. They have a lot of upperclassmen, and it's funny because I've been saying this for the past year. Especially last year when the Pac-12 was dominating the Elite Eight. I might as well have climbed on the Empire State Building, beat on my chest like I was King Kong. So I was excited. I'm like, man, Pac-12, we're running this thing. Yeah. But I guess this year, obviously due to those 2 losses, but it's almost like the powerhouses in college basketball was like, we're back.
We're back.
And we're looking at a Final Four of North Carolina, Duke, Villanova, and Kansas.
Yep.
And this is I said, you've heard me say this. I thought we were past this. I thought that time was over. I thought it was time for the up and coming teams, maybe some UCLA's, the Arizonas, all right, or even if we go
programs.
Yes, the Loyola of Chicago's, right? I thought it was some of these smaller teams, and I wanted to see Miami make it.
Yeah.
Right. So,
but I feel like in terms of these major programs, and we have 4 major programs in the college basketball spectrum in the Final Four, you just can never count these type of programs out. Like I know it's a little segue, but like USC football, like when they get the right coach, and when they're able, we're talking about it, when they're able to keep their guys in state, it's over. Like when you give programs a certain ignition and a certain guy running the program, you can call it raps. And I think I think North Carolina's coach is a first year coach, but like Coach K, Bill Self, Jay Wright, like how many times have they been on these type of stages where they're cutting the nets, they're in the Final Four, they're playing pivotal March tournament game? Like
they live in this environment. They live in this environment. So, I mean, I guess it's good. I think it's a little cliche, especially if Duke wins it all. I'm like, oh, man,
and then Coach K.
Storybook made, this is movie script type stuff. So,
absolutely.
But no, it's rounding up to, it's been a great, very fun tournament. A lot of fun games, a lot of upsets. Yep. I know my round 1 was phenomenal. I picked a lot of upsets, but, unfortunately, just like everybody's bracket, at some point,
it gets.
It does. It does, man. And then maybe it's some guy in the middle of nowhere, maybe in like Timbuktu, or hell, he may even be in outer space somewhere that has a perfect bracket. But I don't know anybody of the sort. So, but that is March Madness. Pretty fun. Obviously, stand by Final Four. We watched, I want to say, Kansas and Miami play today, and then St. Peter's and North Carolina. North Carolina obviously came out with the win and beat them pretty convincingly. So that is going to be a lot of fun coming up. So let's stay tuned on that. But obviously, that's college basketball. We have the NBA, right? Which I know Mr. Isaiah Kidd, is just loving the way that this season is kind of shaping up. I mentioned earlier, we got a Memphis Grizzlies team that I don't know how they. I mean, if you would have told me 4 or 5 months ago that they were going to be the number 2 seed coming into the playoffs, I would have probably have called you a liar, and I probably would have bet you money that it wasn't going to happen. As much as I like them, right? They had a lot of
Yeah,
potential, but
absolutely.
looking at this Memphis Grizzlies team, one, why are they so good? And two, are they legitimate threats, or is this just some flash in the pan shit, right?
Memphis, I think they're good. I mean, in the West, so it's important to say, and I'm only 20, but I can remember, and this is not me, quote unquote, like shitting on the Grizzlies. Like, this is not me, but I can remember, I'm 20, for my entire life, the Western Conference has been somewhat of the superior conference in NBA.
Right.
And for this given year, the Western Conference is still it's decent.
It's top heavy a little bit.
It's top heavy because after you get past like Utah and Dallas, it's a whole bunch of like they're young emerging team. They'd just be happy making it to the playoffs. Like I look at Minnesota. I think they have a lot of young parts, but they'd be happy to make it to the playoffs because they haven't been with it.
I think Denver is a clean bill of health away from being there. If Denver has more health, I think they'll be good.
I can attest to that, and I can agree with that. But in terms of Memphis, why they're so good, I think it starts with, I think it's phenomenal that they have won so many games without Ja Morant. I think they're 15-2.
If I'm not mistaken, as of recent, they beat the Bucks yesterday.
They beat the Bucks
and 127 to 127 to 105. They're 17. I think they're 17-2 now without Ja Morant.
They're 17-2 without Ja Morant. And typically in the NBA, like once your best player or your second best player goes down, it's wraps. Like your team usually folds because your team is just it's just not built the same when you lose
take on that loss.
Yeah, right. And just ask Lakers. So when I look at Memphis, I think it starts with Ja Morant and his dynamic playmaking. I was huge on him coming out of Murray State. I thought he would work. I thought his skill set would work. A lot of people said Westbrook. I see some Westbrook in him in terms of his aggressiveness and his downhill and just raw athletic ability and getting to the rim. But I also see I see not Russell Westbrook because I think Westbrook is a bit more sporadic and a little loose and careless with his ball handling and turning over and taking care of the basketball. But with Ja, I see a guy that's athletic that displays that same similar looking athleticism, but also like the poise and playmaking of a younger John Rondo.
It's controlled.
It's controlled.
Right.
It's controlled. It's not, and he plays at different pace. Right. I tell people all the time, like I see a lot of people on people often reminisce and have this nostalgic feel about MVP Derrick Rose in 2010, and I'm like,
and there are some similarities.
And I always tell people, I'm like, if there was an alien coming out of space and he didn't have the chance to see 2010 Derrick Rose like we did, I would tell them, like, the closest thing that you can probably get to that right now is probably Ja Morant. It's probably Ja Morant. So I think his like swagger, it's very similar. It's almost like his swagger is very similar to Joe Burrow's swagger. It's a confidence.
Yes.
Like it's a confidence that some would probably argue it borderlines cockiness. But with Ja, I just see a guy swagger. It's very, it's like it's Allen Iverson feel, but just more, like the leadership qualities are just more connected. And that's the same thing. That's the same feel I get with Joe Burrow. So
it's a humble confidence to me.
It is.
Because I've never looked at or watched a John Morant interview and felt like, man, this guy is fucking arrogant or anything like that. No, I felt like he's a good kid.
Yeah.
One thing you'll hear me mention a lot, I will always stand on this. Kids that unless you're just a special once in a lifetime guy, you need to spend 3 years, 2 to 3 years in college basketball. If I'm not mistaken, John Morant did 3.
Yes, he did 3. And I'm willing to go this far. I think he'd be the best mid-major point guard to ever play in the NBA. That's neither here or there. That's neither here or there. I put the hot take down right there. I let people think about that. But I think it starts with John Morant. But then I look at guys like Desmond Bane, who's able to just stretch the floor and shoot the 3 at a high clip. He's shooting 42% from 3. He's averaging 18 points per game. I think Dylan Brooks. I really like Dylan Brooks. I love his game and his personality and the way he plays since he was at Oregon. And he just, I still remember this to this day that he just killed Duke. I think it was like in a Sweet 16. And he just killed Duke and Coach K. Him and Coach K was going back at it, whatever. And ever since then, I really like Dylan Brooks. And he's just turned into a pretty solid starter in the NBA.
And you know what's crazy about that team? They have a very well-rounded team with people with players that can create offense and create scoring opportunities for themselves. Because you just mentioned Dylan Brooks is averaging 17 points per game.
Yeah.
Right. You just mentioned Desmond Bane. I think Desmond Bane is averaging 18
He's their second leading scorer.
He's their second leading scorer.
And then you have Jared Jackson,
who's developing. It's
developing. Like I thought I was a little low on him starting out, but he's developed this jumper. He shoots this high arching 3. It's really, he shoots it at a high efficient rate. He averages 16 points per game. He's not necessarily like the rebounder that I thought he could be, but he's a really good stretch.
Right.
So when I look at, as you said, Memphis is a well-oiled machine, and it speaks to why they're 17-2 without John Morant.
And I'm gonna tell you something crazy. So, we have by the way, guys, we have our Rooted in Sports community. We meet every Saturday. So I have a good group chat with some of these guys, and Bo comes on, and good buddy of mine, shout out Bo. And he says, dude, like, the Grizzlies, I don't think we realize how good this Grizzlies team is. He says, let's see, without John Morant, they have beaten the Heat, the Nets, the Sixers, and the Bucks. Right, in recent weeks without John Morant. Any of these teams, I mean, they're all finals contenders in the East.
Yeah. So
that just shows you how deep and not just how deep, how poised this team is. Oh, John Morant's gone. Don't worry, we got it.
We're gonna take care of it. And I'm just looking at some other guys. Like I have guys just listed down, like Zaire Williams, Kyle Anderson, Tyus Jones,
DeAnthony Melton.
Who's averaging he's averaging double figures. I think Memphis has about 4 or 5 guys
averaging double figures.
They have 5 guys that average double figures. So that right there, and then they have like 2-3 other guys who average close to double figures. So it shows you how deep they are. Now in terms of, so I think that's why they're good. They're resilient. They're deep. I think they're young.
They're young.
They're young. Like, do you want me to read off the ages of this squad?
Go ahead, read them off.
I mean, John Morant obviously is 22 years of age. But then you have Desmond 22. 22.
Jesus Christ. I just knew John Morant was like 24. Man, 22.
No, and it seems you would think that because he played 3 years in college. But 22 years old. Desmond Bane, 23. Dylan Brooks, 26. Jared Jackson, 22. Steven Adams, 28. DeAnthony Melton, 23.
Is Steven Adams? Whoa. Is Steven Adams really only 28 years old?
He came out of Pitt, drafted by OKC. He's only 28. He seems like their oldest guy.
Yes,
right?
I just knew Steven Adams was 32, 33.
He's their oldest guy. Between him and Kyle Anderson, they are the oldest 2 guys. The Memphis Grizzlies don't have nobody the age of 30. Like I said, Zaire Williams, he's 20. Kyle Anderson, he's 28. Tyus Jones, 25. Brandon Clark, 25. So, like, when you're just reading down the main contributors and components of this team, it's very young. It reminds me their development and their drafting, and I always have said this because you remember about the Ja Morant and the Zion comparisons with them. They were 1 and 2, and that Zion thing is a whole different. We could spend an hour on that, but 1 and 2, Ja, or I say Zion and Ja. Mm-hmm. And I always said this going into the bubble 2020. I said, yes, Zion, he's getting a lot of love. He may be more marketable. He may have the high flying, the smile, whatever, and the charisma. But I'm like, and it's not even Zion's fault necessarily what I'm about to say. Yeah. But I've always have said for years, Memphis has a team that is well constructed and better constructed around the skill sets of Ja Morant. Then the Pelicans have they're better structured.
And you know what? I like that you said that. That is a good point because you watch Zion. First of all, Zion when he's on the court and he's healthy, he's pretty dominant player, right? So I'm not gonna take anything away from him. But he does kind of feel like a square peg in a circular hole within that team and that offense and that build.
Yeah. And I mean, and maybe some people may say, "Oh, well, Isaiah, it's not fair to say that because Zion's not playing right now in the Pelicans." Yeah, okay, but I have evidence from last year where Memphis made the playoffs. They played against a really good Utah team, and they that was a really competitive series. Utah, right. I mean, I think Memphis actually took the first game, and Ja Morant played really well in that series, and that's where this point has all started. I thought the Grizzlies have better constructed their roster accordingly than the Pelicans have around Zion. Simple as that. And I was going another comparison I have. The way how Memphis has built this roster is very similar to how the way Phoenix have built their young.
I was just gonna say that. I'm glad you mentioned it because I watch this team and I'm like, they're the Phoenix Suns from last year.
Because remember, and people call Phoenix by God, like Phoenix people so surprised.
Yeah,
Phoenix were 8-0 in the bubble. And
they did, and they carried it over,
and they just carried it over. They carried it over, and they added Chris Paul. That's the only element with this Grizzlies team is that they don't. I think, and this goes into the next question that you asked about them being legit Western Conference contenders. I don't know who their second guy is. I know Desmond Bane is averaging 18 points per game. I know Jared Jackson is a young, evolving stretch big, but I don't know down the stretch because in a 7-game, this is what people fail to realize. In a 7-game series in the NBA, usually the best team wins, and from game 1 to game 2 to game 3 and so forth, defenses get better, coaches get better, game plans get better, and I believe in Ja Morant enough where he'd do his thing, but I don't know if they have that second guy that can do that under the pressure in a 7-game series, per se, like going up against the Warriors.
And you know what? That's a fair take. That's a fair assessment. I think ideally you would want Jaren Jackson to kind of do some more things in the post and kind of become that down low guy for them. He's developing, but he's not to the point. He's not where DeAndre Ayton was last year, where DeAndre Ayton was starting. You saw him start to figure it out. Like, man, I can do this. I can. Yeah, he really developed as a post player.
He did.
But I mean, now the difference is, I think, from a Phoenix last year to, and we look at Memphis this year, is I think that Ja Morant is light years ahead of a Devin Booker of being like a big time superstar that can really take over games. I think he's developed that and he's learned that a lot sooner than we've seen other guys do it.
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say I think it's because right now as it lines up, Memphis is the 2 seed, and with the Warriors, they have about, I think they have 2.5 or 3 game lead on the Warriors. Excuse me. It seems as if Memphis probably finish. If I was a betting man, they'd probably finish as a 2 seed, and they would have to play. As of right now, they will have to play Minnesota in the first round.
And I got them beating them.
I got them beating them. I like Minnesota, but I got Minnesota beating Memphis. I mean, I have Memphis. No. I have Memphis.
I was about to say.
Memphis. I'm sorry. Being confused with the M's. My bad.
Yeah, I know. Easy to mix up.
Yeah, but in terms of that, looking ahead, that's where I hesitate a little bit, because I think 2 would have to play 3, assuming that the Warriors would win their first round matchup. You would have a Memphis Grizzlies and Golden State Warriors second round matchup. And I'm just not sure. Like I said, I think Memphis, they lack a second, as of right now, they lack a second guy, a go-to guy down the stretch when things get rough.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you something interesting about this Memphis team or Memphis period. It's funny to me how things come full circle. And I feel like everything has really come full circle for this franchise. And I say that because let's look at them. Let's look at that franchise 8 or 9 years ago, right? Let's look at them 2013 when they made the Western Conference Finals. They lost to what? The Spurs, right? Mark Gasol.
Yep.
Right, Zach Randolph, Mike Conley,
Tony Allen.
Tony Allen. Now, what was always the knock on them? The thing was they were always, okay, this is a phenomenal team. They play great team ball, but they don't have that one big superstar that could take them over the top.
Got it.
Now you look at them, and it's kind of like now they have that, right? And they may not have a number 2 guy that just stands out, but I think as a collective, they play great team ball. They play great defense. They shoot the ball well. They have all these guys scoring in double figures. And when you add in some John Morant to that, if he can manage to stay healthy, I mean, Jesus Christ, man, this can be something. This could be a dangerous team.
And when you say that, you have me thinking of 2 instances.
Okay.
Where I have seen in my lifetime where it's a great team collectively, and then you had that one superstar that gets you over the top. And I'm thinking of the 2011 Dallas Mavericks, and I want to say the 2019 Toronto Raptors, where
yes,
Toronto. I was going to say with Dallas for years. I'm giving some historical context, but for years Dallas was a team in the Western Conference, year in, year out, winning 50 plus games per year, and just getting, losing. It was the Western Conference. It was the Western Conference in the 2010s. So it was a lot of Lakers and Spurs just dominating. Right. Eventually, the Dallas Mavericks get over the top, and that playoff run was phenomenal. They beat Portland in the first round. They beat the Lakers. They swept the Lakers in the second round.
By the way, they went through a gauntlet.
A gauntlet Western Conference. And they beat a young OKC team with Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. So, and then they beat Miami, obviously, in the finals.
Right.
So,
uber talented.
And Dirk was phenomenal.
He was.
And Kawhi, looking at the Raptors run, Kawhi was phenomenal. And those teams, so when you say that, I think of those 2 instances where collectively it was a great team, but
they didn't have a number 2 guy to write home about.
Right. Like, could you, like, that's 2011 Mavericks team. Can you tell me who the second guy was? Like,
I mean, some people say, oh my God. Or some people might try to say Sean Marion, right? But maybe. I mean, but
if
they don't really have anybody. JJ Barea.
Really. Like, you can't. It was somebody different. It seemed like it was somebody different for each series. Like, I know Page Stojakovic. I know he had a big time round, a big time series versus the Lakers. You know, I know Jason Terry. He had his moments throughout that playoff run
and the finals.
In the finals, yeah. And looking at the Raptors, I mean, one could argue, Pascal Siakam,
Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, Fred VanVleet.
Yeah, he took a couple of charges.
Yeah, but the
Yeah.
Raptors, they had a great for years, similar to
Great,
Dallas,
great
a great
team.
nucleus, great team. But they just couldn't go over the top. It was LeBron.
Right. Right.
it was LeBron in the Eastern Conference. They couldn't go over that hurdle. Once he
Right.
left, they added Kawhi. They got over the top. And
Right.
they have similar components to this Memphis Grizzlies team, where
Exactly.
great defensively, they can shoot the three. That's important. Shooting the three.
Right.
Because now you watch a lot of these NBA games. You're like, it's a close first quarter, but then one team may get hot in the second quarter, and the other team just goes cold, and you look up, and you're like, damn, they're down by 25.
If you can't shoot, if you're a team that can't shoot in today's NBA, you're done.
Yeah, just ask
You're
Lakers.
done. You're done. Yeah, literally, that's the Lakers.
I'm sorry. Just ask the Lakers. So that's I think so. In terms of the word like legit, can I see the Grizzlies making a Western Conference Finals appearance? Surely I can.
Mhm.
And I think they are legit. I think they are
Right.
legit, and they should be taken seriously. And I know we just dissected that whole thing in terms of the one superstar and a collective great team winning a championship, but I want to see I want to see the maturation process of John Morant in the jump shot in a playoff series. So as of right now, I think they're good enough to win 2 rounds. But if I'm a betting man, I'll probably say they lose in the second round to the Warriors. If you know
Yeah.
that's what I'm forecasting.
And rightfully so, because if you look at the Warriors, it's funny. I'm watching this year, and there are games that they look like the best team in the world.
And then yeah,
And they've lost some games. Don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
is it just me, or do I feel like, do you feel like the Warriors are just biding time? They're getting guys healthy. They're focused on they have the long term view when it comes to they understand what it takes to win a championship, because they still have their championship nucleus guys here. So is it just me? I feel like they're kind of like, I'm not going to say going through the motions, but they understand what to expect at this point. So for them, it's not even about getting the end of the regular season wins. For them, it's about, okay, can we get guys healthy for playoff time where it counts and it matters.
That's interesting that you say that, because like before the season started, I had to go to State Warriors win the NBA championship. And as the season progressed, like after the first month, I was feeling like, hey, the Warriors, they're gonna win the NBA championship.
You felt good about yourself.
And after now we fast forward a bit, a couple guys have gone down. You can see the age and nutrition starting to get to their couple guys, like their core guys. Steph, Clay, Draymond, Iguodala, they have all 4 sustained some type of serious injury over the past year and a half or 2.
Right.
And a part of me throughout this recent struggle, or the recent struggle that they had a couple like a week ago and a week and a half ago, a part of me wanted to say they're just trying to buy time. They're trying to get healthy. And you're right. When you turn, depending on what game you're looking at, you turn on a Warriors game and you say, this is the best team in basketball.
Literally.
And you say Steph Curry, best player in basketball. Mm-hmm. But then I see some of their other games on other nights, and I just like,
what are we watching?
Is this the second? Is this team that's going to win the NBA championship? No, it's not. So I think you have a valid point. Mm-hmm. I think the age and nutrition of their core guys it's catching up. It's catching up.
It is.
It's catching up. So I'm not gonna say that they're buying time. I do think they're trying to get healthy, but James Wiseman is going to be out for the remainder of the season because they're going to take precautionary needs to his torn meniscus injury and so forth, right? So I thought that would have been a huge
addition for him. Oh my god.
Addition with his size and his skill that he can bring offensively. They're not going to have that. So I'm not gonna say that they're buying time. I do think the rest of the league is catching up a little bit. But I'm gonna take integrity. I'm gonna stick with my pick. I picked them to win the NBA championship and get out the Western Conference. That's what I'm gonna stick with.
You're sticking with the Warriors? Okay.
I'm gonna stick with it. But I'm just hoping that their younger guys like Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, those guys step up in critical playoff series.
And they'll need that. And I think that it's a good thing you mentioned, these pivotal injuries that Steph and Clay and I know Draymond has spent some time out with some injuries as well.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, this could very easily end up like 2019, when they played Toronto, where everybody just broke down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not careful. So that's why it's pivotal for them to start kind of adding an extra load onto these younger guys. You said, i.e., a Jordan Poole, who I like, by the way. I think
I really like Jordan Poole.
Yeah, Jordan Poole, really good guy. And it's unfortunate for James Wiseman. James Wiseman, anyone that knows me, James Wiseman's been my pet cat for the last 2 years. Right? I just knew he was, was going to be perfect for today's NBA. I guess we're going to have to wait another year. But I agree. Age and nutrition is kind of catching up to them. Do they have a chance? Yes, but they're going to need to stay healthy, and they're going to need some big play from some younger guys to kind of downstream. Because if you look at Phoenix is where Golden State was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
They're young, they're poised, they're confident, they're dominant, and I think now it's scary because they know how dominant they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you've heard multiple of them say we're the best team in the world. So, it's not. They're not going to be they're not going to be an easy out, and I think it's going to take a Hercule. Let me say, am I saying the word right? A Herculean effort.
A Herculean
effort. Right, right. Shout out to my people that love Greek mythology. A Herculean effort by whoever feels like they're going to beat them. So,
right.
Whew. Yeah, so that's the NBA. Memphis Grizzlies are the number 2 seed. Phoenix is number 1. Golden State number 3, and the rest is obviously in a flux. We'll see. We talk about the Lakers all the time. I don't think the Lakers. They have a gauntlet right now. We'll see. I'd have to check the score, see where they're at right now. But it doesn't look like they're going to make the playoffs. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But hour one, we talk basketball. And hour 2 is when we get down and dirty. We get in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
we go on the gridiron and we talk some football, right? So, right, Mr. Isaiah Kitt, right?
Yes.
We had NFL free agency. It's been exciting. I think I think this has been the most interesting offseason literally in years, right? We've seen.
Kenneth, I was gonna say, and we're about to segue into this. As you can see, and we're both excited. Like NBA, it's going great. NBA playoffs, can't wait. But boy, the NFL offseason has treated us well. And I was gonna say, I've been doing so. Coming up, this upcoming July would make it my 3rd year I've been doing my podcast. 3 years, and I've been covering the NFL offseason every year in my podcast. And I tell you, it gets better and better. And I often talk about this a lot on my podcast, but the NFL does a lot right in terms of the scheduling. I think the NBA, this is just my personal opinion, segue, but I think the NBA has some scheduling issues. I think the NFL scheduling properly.
I can see that.
And the NFL, the one thing that the NBA always had over the NFL was its free agency, because stars will move left and right, player mobility, player empowerment. Well, that is now shifted to the NFL. And it seems like, the NFL has pulled like an NBA, and they're doing it like a little bit better with like just the AFC is just has become this gauntlet.
Powerhouse.
I can't wait.
Yeah. The AFC has become a powerhouse. And if you really look at this offseason and you look at some of the big transactions that have happened, more often than not, it's been the AFC making these big signings. It's almost like as soon as everything got started, it was like ready, set, go. and and the AFC. You know, obviously they started it off with J.C. Jackson. You know, Chargers signed J.C. Jackson, right? And then obviously Von Miller went to the Bills, and once again, just been very, very crazy. But if you were to name one or two, name what are one or two low risk, right? Because obviously you get the big money guys, but what about some low risk, high reward? Like, okay, this may fly under the radar a little bit, but I feel like this guy can actually be really good for this franchise. What are some low risk, high reward signings for you that you kind of pinpointed?
I think there's so for me, I always try to psychoanalyze so many moves, like in terms of teams, you know, signing guys accordingly to their division and their conference. I'm thinking Miles Jack to the Steelers. I think was a pretty decent move. I also thought the Steelers adding to their offensive line Mason Cole for a reasonable price, and that was the thing. I bashed the Steelers for drafting Najee Harris, not because of Najee Harris and his talent or lack thereof. I thought Najee Harris was very talented, but I thought with offensive line that was in shambles, it's going to be pretty hard for a guy like Najee Harris to really show his true value. So the mere fact that the Steelers went out and tried to buffer their offensive line, that I think it was at a reasonable price. These guys aren't necessarily like all pro bowler type of offensive linemen, but I think you look at this as a unit. This is a desperate need of professionalism and just depth at the offensive line position with the Steelers. And I also like the signing of Miles Jack. So Miles Jack, I think, you know, really, I see the comment. Really, a really good pass rusher. I think he'll add to the Steelers' defense. I think he'll definitely add to the Steelers' defense and pass rushing element that they already have. Great defensively already. I think Miles Jack's he just adds to that.
And you know what I like? Okay, I wouldn't say I'm a big Miles Jack fan. He to me he was to UCLA what Jabril Peppers was to Michigan. Two versatile, uber athletic, overrated guys, right? They were talking about Miles Jack. Obviously, he had the knee injury, but people were saying, "Oh, he's going to be a top 4, top 5 pick." Was never big on him, but I will, kind of give him his flowers. When he went to Jacksonville over time, you really saw him develop and round up to become a pretty decent linebacker. I know last year, I think he had a lot of tackles. I want to say he had 120 plus. Led them in tackles, and I think he was one of the league leaders in total tackles. So you're right; it is a good pickup. They put him next to I know they drafted a kid out of Michigan, an inside linebacker. They put him next to him and kind of see where it goes, maybe create some pass rushing opportunities. So yeah, like I said, I think that's a decent signing for them. I don't know if he starts, but I think once again, low risk, high reward. Either he's a really decent rotational linebacker that can do some things in coverage on a pass rush, maybe play some special teams, and on the high end, maybe he becomes one of your leading guys. Right. Yeah. So that's the definition of low risk, high reward. I looked at low risk, high reward, and it's actually a few signings that I can name. Signings or transactions. I'm going to name one that I'm absolutely in love with. That's Matt Ryan to the Colts.
Oh boy,
I'm in love with it.
I was gonna say because I thought that. So for me, I thought that was a little too high profile. But continue. I'm gonna follow you up with it.
No.
I agree.
Like I said, they just gave up a third for him.
A third for Matt Ryan.
A third for Matt Ryan. First of all, I hear Atlanta fans cry and complain about Matt Ryan all the time. Matt Ryan's a Hall of Fame. His Hall of Fame ticket is punch. He may not be a first ballot guy, but he's gonna make it with his numbers. Matt Ryan is, first of all, people don't realize this. Matt Ryan's gonna go to the Colts. He's gonna have the best running game he's ever had. Yes, that's including when he had Devontae Freeman. This is Michael Turner. This is going to be the most dominant running game he's ever had, and this is going to be the best defensive unit he's ever played with. The Colts, when healthy, granted, we have to see how they kind of how if they can sustain that without Matt Eberflus. He left. He got hired by Chicago, their defensive coordinator. But they're a top 3, top 5 unit defensively.
Yeah.
So you're asking Matt Ryan, come in. Hey, look, you don't even need to be special. You just need to come in here. You need to lead these guys. You need to make the correct decisions. And when we need you, occasionally we're going to need you to make some big plays with your arm, look some safeties off and do something, which once again, Matt Ryan, they didn't call him Matty Ice for nothing. Matt Ryan for a good 3 to 4 years is probably one of the most clutch quarterbacks in football. So I love the fit. I think they need to add a little bit more receiver-wise, which I think they'll do in the draft and free agency. Look out for Julio Jones. Don't be surprised if Julio Jones goes there on a veteran minimum type contract. But I think Matt Ryan is going to pay immediate dividends for the Colts.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay, and transactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Matt Ryan, it's favorable for him.
Yes.
Atlanta was going into a total rebuild.
Oh, yeah.
And you're looking at an Indianapolis team, unlike the rest of the AFC, they've been the AFC South. So we have obviously Tennessee. They're going to be contending for that division with Tennessee, obviously, because Tennessee, Mike Vrabel, the formula that they have built in Tennessee, it works. Right. So they're going to be in contention with Tennessee. But you look at Jacksonville, we still got to see what Jacksonville what they do. They went out and spent some money. They gave out some questionable contracts. But and then we got to see what happens with the Houston Texans. Obviously, they moved on from Deshaun Watson. But with Indianapolis, I always say with Indianapolis, I think Chris Ballard has done a great job.
He's done a phenomenal job
with building this team. I always, this is just my little wish. But boy, I wish they would just get Andrew Luck back. Because it's perfect, it's made. But with Matt Ryan, I think you're still getting a guy that can still play.
Oh, yeah.
You look at his numbers, like Atlanta and the Falcons fans, they complain about Matt Ryan and their team. I'm like, well, you look at his numbers, you look at the offensive production. Matt Ryan in the offense, that's not a problem. It's the defense. The defense has been awful since the 28 since they blown the 28-3.
I don't think I've ever seen a dominant Atlanta defense, and if it was probably in the 90s or something like that. But I don't think they were ever a top 3, top 5 unit. Somebody please feel free, comment, correct me. But I've never seen a dominant Atlanta defensive unit.
I can't imagine it. Like I don't remember it. They may have had a dominant defensive player, but as a unit, as a unit. Statistically, they have not been that. And
average at best.
At best, even the year, I don't know if we can pull it up, but even their year they went to the year they went to the Super Bowl,
they were the 21st or 22nd ranked. They were a situationally good defense. And they got turnovers, and obviously the kid, man, it sounds bad. He was a draft bust. The kid they drafted out of Clemson. I'm forgetting his name.
Yeah.
That just shows you how big of a draft bust he was. But he had a big year that year. Yeah, he had a big year that year. He got about 15, 16 plus sacks. But outside of that, they weren't special at anything.
They weren't. Yeah. And it was the glue to that team was their offense, Kyle Shanahan and his offensive whiz and genius, and what they had on offense with Julio, Matt Ryan, Devontae Freeman, and so forth. So I do like the move with Matt Ryan in Indianapolis. I love Indianapolis core. You want to go to another one, or you want me to throw out another one of mine? You can go. You can finish yours.
I want you to throw out as a matter of fact, throw out another one of yours because I got some heat.
Okay. Well, I'm not gonna say low risk. It could be low risk, right? Or I'm not gonna say low risk, but high reward, right?
Okay.
I'm looking at a guy, and it's mainly because of the division. And I'm looking at a guy what the Chargers did with Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson.
Right.
So I was recording when Russell Wilson got traded to the Denver Broncos, and I talked about it. Mm-hmm. And what I said was the one advantage that because all of the teams in the AFC West have great quarterback play.
Right.
I think we had this conversation, but like you look at all four guys, you can make a legitimate argument that all four guys are at least top 12 guys.
I think all of them are top 10 guys.
We think
I think all of them are top 10. All of them are top 10 guys. Yeah.
You said that. So every team will have really good quarterback play. How do you combat that? I said you need to have either a great secondary, a really great secondary, or a great pass rush. And Denver, I gave them the early advantage because they had a great secondary. They have a bona fide secondary. Right. Well, what do you know? The Chargers went out and buffered their secondary with getting the best corner on the free agency market and also getting a former All-Pro pass rusher and Khalil Mack. I still think Khalil Mack, I think he gets a lot of heat because it seemed like that Raiders and Chicago trade, like everybody thought the Bears won that trade when it first happened.
Nobody. That's the first lose trade I've seen in a while, and it's nothing. And it's nothing against Khalil Mack. Chicago just wasn't in a position to take advantage of him.
Like Khalil Mack, all he was, and I'm not trying to demean him, but all he was a great pass rusher added to a really good defense. But Chicago never really put everything else together on the other side of the football. But with the Chargers, that's the thing. I think they now have, obviously, Khalil Mack, he won't be double teamed because he has Joey Bosa on the other side. So you got to face them to head on. Two phenomenal pass rushers. And now I think the Chargers have buffered their secondary. And I think looking at a division that they're playing in, and you're going to have to be able to stop. At some point, you got to be able to stop these quarterbacks. I think the Chargers, they have similar to the Broncos, they have put together a core defensively, a unit defensively that can do that. I think the only thing the Chargers need to do in the draft is draft defensive tackle Jordan Davis out of Georgia. If they can get their hands on him,
who both me and Ira had them taken, right? So no. So that's good. No, that's those are good, high reward. I think those guys are going to pay immediate dividends. Now, when looking at some of the other contracts that were signed, right?
Yeah.
Let's look at La'el Collins to the Bengals.
Yeah.
Cowboys guy, right? Anyone knows I love the Cowboys. La'el Collins is going to go to the Bengals. He's going to give them stability on the right side. I mean, last year Joe Burrow got sacked 70 times for a damn reason. They signed him for 3 years, $21 million. If I'm not mistaken, it's more like 2 years, sub $20 million, right?
Yeah.
So it's a pretty good contract. And if I'm not mistaken, they have some things in that contract. Yeah, they have some concept and things in that contract as far as him health-wise, because obviously he struggled to stay healthy. Another signing, Rashad Penny. He signed a 1-year deal, $5.75 million. I have always been big on Rashad Penny since he came out of San Diego State. Anyone that looks at my IG profile, I went ahead and I had a nice little post and I said Rashad Penny he's becoming the player that Pete Carroll drafted out of San Diego State. And he kind of had this resurrection year towards the end of the year. Chris Carson was hurt. There was nobody in his way. And he started to look dominant. And I'm going to make a comparison. It was almost like 2018. I don't know if anybody remembers the 2018 season. There was a runner for Tennessee by the name of Derrick Henry, who towards the back end of that season, he really hit his second win. We see King Henry now. We see him breaking all these records, but I have to humbly remind people that there was a time
running backs in front of him.
There was a time where Derrick Henry couldn't get on the field. He couldn't beat out DeMarco Murray for the longest. And then that 2018 season, they traded for or signed Deion Lewis to be the starter over him. Mm-hmm. But either way, towards the end of the season, he had a stride, and you really he start running with confidence, and he start becoming the dominant player that we see today. That's what I saw in Rashad Penny the last 5 or 6 games of the 2021 season. So I think Rashad Penny, especially in a rebuild, let's be honest, if you have questions at quarterback, you better at least have a running game. I think right now Seattle can say they have a running back that's capable, that's young, that's growing, just starting to realize his potential, and they have something to move forward with, and hopefully they build that defense as well. So Rashad Penny, I'll tell you another one. Juju Smith-Schuster for the Chiefs.
Ooh, I like it.
I like it. Some people think a lot of people are down on Juju. I think it's because of his, his social media
The TikTok
personality,
stuff.
the
Yeah.
TikTok, right? He does all right. He's a big clown, but he's really good at his craft. Obviously, we've seen him early on in Pittsburgh have those years. He had one Pro Bowl year. He was the Robin to Antonio Brown's Batman, right? But we've kind of seen him settle in more of a slot possession type of role, which isn't a bad thing.
It's not.
He's going to give the Chiefs something that they haven't had in recent memory. And they haven't had a guy like him who can really be a consistent possession guy. He can play
Dwayne Bowe.
Since probably Dwayne Bowe, but honestly, I can argue that he may not be as good as Dwayne Bowe.
No,
but he's more versatile than Dwayne Bowe is because Juju can play the X, the Y, the slot. He can run a full route tree. Great hands. He's just a pro, little immature, but he's still a pro's pro. So he's a guy that, at best, he becomes a high-end number 2. At worst, he's a very productive, solid number 3, number 4 guy.
Yeah.
So I like the Juju Smith-Schuster signing for the Chiefs. I think he's going to pay immediate dividends. We'll see if they draft somebody in the first round to kind of add to that wide receiving core. Yeah. And I'll say this last one that I think is going to be great. Marcus Mariota to the Falcons. I want to say it was 2 years, $18.75 million.
Interesting.
This is the perfect. I mean, if I'm Marcus Mariota, I'm thanking God. Once again, we don't know if it's going to work out. But I mean, the truth is, can we be honest?
Yeah.
Atlanta has nothing to lose, and Marcus Mariota has nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose at all.
They have everything to gain. So it's literally either Marcus Mariota is going to be, he's going to become your new starter moving forward, or he's a bridge quarterback for the guy that you draft. And next year, we all know next year is it's going to be a really good quarterback draft. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud coming out. All right. And there are a few other guys hanging in there as well that could possibly be pretty good. So Marcus Mariota is going to get every chance to show his wares. I mean, this is like the tryout opportunity that a lot of guys that are stuck in that backup purgatory. There's a lot of guys wish and pray for that type of opportunity. Marcus Mariota is getting it. He can go to Atlanta. He can make some plays. And hell, let's say maybe they move on from him after a year. If he can make some plays, he can give he has a chance to rebuild his market.
Absolutely.
So that was those were a few of my favorite low risk, high reward signings. Do you have any more?
I was gonna say Corey Littleton. He signed a 1 year, just over $2.5 million deal with the Carolina Panthers. Who I thought the Panthers, despite missing out on Deshaun Watson, I think they had a really productive offseason. So I like the Panthers getting Corey Littleton. He didn't necessarily work out in Vegas. He had a couple good years with the Rams, but didn't work out. He got somewhat of a payday in Vegas. His 2 seasons there didn't really
premature.
Yeah, a little premature. But I think this is like you said, low risk type of deal that could pay out. He could be you could see some flashes of him that we saw with the Rams and Carolina. I think Carolina, they're building a somewhat of a special defense. So I like what they did. They also went out and got Dante Jackson,
brought
him back, and then Xavier Woods, who we're familiar with, right?
Yeah, we know who he is. Play for Louisiana Tech. Pretty productive guy.
But overall, I think Corey Littleton to Carolina was a fairly good move.
Very, very boom or bust, because one thing about Corey Littleton is at a minimum, Corey Littleton is actually a pretty goddamn good special teams guy too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, and he's a good third down nickel coverage linebacker. So yeah, that's a good pickup for him.
Absolutely. I also think I'm looking at, you mentioned Cincinnati, Alex Kappa.
Yeah.
I think also him at the guard position. Obviously, we know the one thing Cincinnati needed to fix was their offensive line. because it was atrocious. It was
Right.
it was god awful last year. And you look at schematically what they want to do offensively with the guys that they have. They are this vertical threat passing team down the field. They want to hit you with a lot of vertical threats, a lot of vertical routes, and they have a lot of vertical threats. Well, in order to do that at a high rate or continuously do it at a high rate, you have to be able to stretch the field, and you have to be able to stretch the field, but also you got to have time to do so. You got to have the time to read those progressions and let those guys get into their routes. So I think you mentioned Lionel Collins. I'm gonna mention Alice Kappa. I think it's a fair deal. 4 years for $40 million. The Buccaneers couldn't necessarily work out a deal, but I think he is definitely a guy that can help. That could replace whoever the hell Cincinnati had playing at guard position. Because
some janitor, some guy that in the offseason he works at Food for Less or Kroger's or something like that. I don't know. But they say, hey, you want to play guard? You want to play guard in the NFL this year? That's who was blocking for Joe Burrow.
That's who was blocking for Joe Burrow. So I definitely think that was a good move for Cincinnati.
Alice Kappa, no, good pickup. I'm gonna name another person that I think is obviously a little closer to home. You'll be familiar with him. First of all, I'm not a big fan of how Dallas has addressed free agency. You hear me? We'll talk about that in just a while when we do our Rooted in Football segment. But they re-signed Leighton Vander Esch, which I thought was actually pretty smart because this is a guy that you've seen flash before. Obviously, his rookie season was phenomenal. Made the Pro Bowl as a rookie. Was playing like one of the best linebackers in football. Obviously, had some ups and downs health-wise and just when he was on the field. But towards the back end of last season, you saw that light switch come back on and him start to really settle into his role in Dan Quinn's defense. He actually was the guy that made that pivotal stop against the San Francisco 49ers that gave Dallas a chance to win that game. He stopped Deebo Samuel. So I think it's a very low risk, high reward. Maybe LVE comes back and you see the Wolf Hunter's back, right?
Yeah.
And he has 120, 130 plus tackles, and he literally is playing like the guy that you drafted him to be. And maybe you look at keeping him long term. And if not, maybe he's just a body that can come in there and give you some depth at the linebacker position. That it can kind of go either way. But I thought that was very smart re-signing by Dallas. Honestly, once it was quiet and he didn't get signed immediately, I kind of felt like he was coming back. So that was a very, very good low risk, high reward. Outside of that, their offseason has kind of been kind of trash, right? But that is my thoughts on that. But I mean, in light of Dallas, you ready to roll in and Rooted in Football and talk some NFC East?
Might as well. Let's get it.
Let's get it. So obviously, guys, we do Rooted in Football every single freaking week. And we talk about we dissect these divisions in preparation for the NFL draft, which will be the end of April. So it's coming up. Obviously, Rooted in Sports is going to have an NFL draft show, but this week we're doing the NFC East, and we'll be talking about obviously the Cowboys, Eagles, Washington Commanders. I don't like the name, and the Giants.
I hate
it. So starting out, Isaiah, let's start with the Dallas Cowboys. Right. Obviously, they finished. They were 12-5, first in the NFC East, fourth in the NFC as a whole. What are some things that went right during the season? What went wrong? Where's this team right now? Where are they currently at right now?
The Cowboys, I thought for like the first month and a half, I thought like the first 8 games, I think they were like 6-2. And even though, and despite their 2 losses, I thought all 8 games they played great. I thought they played good enough to win all of their first 8 games. But it seems like with Dallas, not necessarily even down the stretch, but towards the middle, that November stretch of their season, where I kind of predicted that's where things would get a little tough. Where you had a couple of the AFC West opponents, such as the Chiefs and the Raiders, who turned out to be playoff teams. And if you just look at Dallas, their losses last year, it came up against playoff teams. That's what they struggled against.
Coincidentally,
Coincidentally, they have struggled against playoff teams, and that's what has led to their demise. I think in terms of where they are now, I think it's even with them losing key guys like Randy Gregory, Amari Cooper, Lionel Collins. I do think you can still look at this Cowboy team, even depending on what they do in the draft too. You can look at them and say they can still be deemed and looked at as the NFC East favorite. Right. Just based off the fact I think they have the best quarterback in the division.
Hey, look! Not according to Colin Cowherd. He said Carson Wentz is the best quarterback in the division. But he had to get back on his bullshit. Another story for another day.
Yeah. And the Carson Wentz thing, we'll get to that. Trust me, we'll get to that. But regardless, I still think that the Cowboys have the best quarterback in the division. I think you even looking at from top to bottom in terms of roster, I do think the Cowboys. I don't think they get enough credit. Stephen Jones and Jerry Jones, but they do. Over the past couple of years, they've done a hell of a job in drafting, and getting them there. I don't, but I think people just look at the Cowboys and they're like, "Oh, their front office is dysfunctional," but I'm like, they do a pretty good job of drafting. I know Belichick, he can't draft to save his life. So when we say dysfunctional front office, I think that gets a bad rep at times. It gets a little out there because they do a pretty good job drafting.
Well, I think when we talk about dysfunctional front office, which I will somewhat agree with that sentiment, it's not so far as drafting. They actually draft very well. Quietly as kept. Anybody that's watching, the Dallas Cowboys have actually drafted very well. Probably one of the best drafting teams over the past 10 to 15 years.
I think
they draft talent and they draft really good homegrown and develop very good homegrown talent. They do that very well. Now, their issue to me is how they initiate transactions, trades, how they deal with free agency. That's where they become dysfunctional, right?
And we see like the way how they have paid certain guys. I thought even with looking at the Dak Prescott contract, I thought it was a bit. Dak is my guy. I'm gonna support Dak. But in terms of how you talk about it, in terms of how the Cowboys handle that, you had this, you were nip and tuck with this guy for damn near 2.5 years on a contract negotiation. And then you look at the contract details, he got everything he wanted. So if you were going to give him like essential in terms of like the major things, the guaranteed dollars and no trade, like, if you were going to give him all of these things in the contract in terms of the details, what was the whole fuss and fit about for 2 years?
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to explain that particular situation to you.
No, okay, and before you do that,
go ahead.
Can you agree? Have the Cowboys been a bit reckless with their money?
So I'll tell you this. Yes and no. I don't think they're as bad as they used to be. Okay. They used to be a lot worse. They used to be like, I mean, man, I could come in there and catch a 50-yard pass and be like, contract, right? But not anymore. I think that you've kind of seen them try to emulate some of the Patriot type of deal. Like, they tried to learn from other friends. They try, right? I'm not saying full effort, but they've tried. Now, with the Dak Prescott situation, that was actually something of their own making, right? Dak Prescott's been there since 2016. He was a 4th-round draft pick. Obviously, he's outplayed his draft slot, but he had a very questionable 2017 season. People are like, "Is this guy going to be the quarterback for this football team?" 2018 struggles a little bit, but they end up making the play. They acquire Amari Cooper. Dak looks better, and they make the playoffs. Now they win the playoff game and beat Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks, who were favored in that game. Now, here's my thing. I always make this comparison. When you're paying your bills, right? Anybody here that owns their own place, right? When you're paying your bills, do you pay your Wi-Fi bill, your cell phone bill? You pay your rent first, right? I'm sure everybody's going to say, any sensible person is going to say, I'm going to pay my rent first, right? Absolutely. So when it comes to signing players for your football team, your quarterback is your rent. It's the most expensive. It's the most expensive position in sports. The contract you have for your quarterback literally can dictate how you sign the rest of the players on your roster.
It sets the precedent for something.
It sets the precedent. So what Dallas does, and this is where the dysfunction comes into play, they say, you know what? We like Dak Prescott, right? Has great phenomenal intangibles. Still has some developing to do. We like him, but we're not going to sign him right now. We're going to sign Jalen Smith, who's not on the fucking roster anymore, right? and is barely hanging on in the NFL. We're gonna sign Lael Collins. We're gonna sign Ezekiel Elliott, who I love, and I think, and I have an argument for Ezekiel Elliott to say that
you always do,
and he somewhat earned his money. Another story for another day. And we're gonna sign everybody. We're gonna pay. Look, we're gonna pay phone bill. We're gonna pay Netflix.
Hell, we even pay for the receiver. We'll pay the receiver that we traded for.
We're going to pay everybody before we pay Dak Prescott. And what they did and everyone knows, inflation is real. Inflation is a thing.
We see.
We see, right? So as time went by, the price tag went up. And I'm going to tell you this, just when you thought that they still had some leverage, guess what happened? Dak Prescott gets hurt. And they see exactly what the hell they look like without Dak Prescott. They literally dropped a whole 10, 15 points per game. I think they went from scoring 28 points per game to scoring like 17 points per game without Dak Prescott. And then they see what life without him is like. And then the offseason, you have teams like Denver, Washington, New York, Carolina, New Orleans that are like, hey, go ahead and let Dak Prescott go. Let him go. We'll take him. So Dak Prescott got put in a position where he had leverage, and they were going to give him whatever he wanted, and that's why he has the contract. And plus obviously, you let lesser quarterbacks get paid before him. You let Carson Wentz get paid. You let Jared Goff get paid.
Yep.
Kirk Cousins is on his fourth freaking contract extension, right?
My goodness.
Right. By the way, little underrated. I pay some respect to Kirk Cousins, but I'll say all that to say is that's why that contract shaped up to be the way that it did, because they paid everybody before him. They let other guys get paid before him, and the price went up. The price tag went up, and he got leverage.
And Kenneth,
yeah,
that's exactly what I'm talking about. The dysfunction in terms of what you just explained, in terms of paying everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about. You're paying a running back. And we can have, and we have this funny debate in terms of Ezekiel Elliott's contract. And I'm like, okay, you paid him, but like any type of running back over the past 10 years that's gotten paid, I swear, the moment the ink gets dry, teams end up regretting it. And I'm not saying Zeke can't play anymore, but something always just usually happens. Christian McCaffrey
hasn't played in 2 years.
Never got hurt. Stafford never got hurt. First few years in Carolina, never got hurt. The ink wasn't even dry on his contract.
Injury.
Ankle. His ankle is as fat as a chicken breast. So like we can't like the paying the running backs, we gotta stop. And that's why I feel like Dallas, that's the big mistake that I feel like they made. And we can go back and forth all the time about this. But that's what it is.
So I'll say this, for anyone that disagrees, and obviously, Zeke's had a very bad 2020 season, probably his worst. I think that was probably his worst football season.
That's probably his worst career ever. That's
his first in his career.
Yeah.
But 2021 was somewhat of a revelation for him. Obviously, he got hobbled, partially torn PCL, but he still had 1,200 yards from scrimmage. He still was far and away the best pass blocking running back in the game and the league, right? And he was still one of the better receiver running backs in the league, and
he's getting better at that.
And he still scored. Well, I always thought he was good. I just thought he just didn't get as many looks as other guys did.
Okay.
And he still scored 12 to 13 touchdowns. So it's funny with Zeke, what I tell people is that you guys are going to hate this, but when you look at all these recent running back contracts, there's a fair argument that Zeke has probably earned his contract more than anybody else has, especially if we take out the 2020 season. So Zeke gets paid in 2019. Guess what? He gets paid in 2019. He doesn't go to training camp. A lot of people don't remember this. He didn't get a training camp. He held out all training camp.
Mm-hmm.
Zeke's first time in that year taking contact was week 1 against the Giants. And what does he do? He plays himself into shape. He has over, if I'm not mistaken, 1,500 yards from scrimmage. He scores 13 touchdowns, and he makes the Pro Bowl. That's the year he signed a contract.
And I say this about Zeke's contract in comparison to other running backs.
Mm-hmm.
The production level has still been there somewhat.
It has. I think you just haven't gotten the wow plays. People want the wow plays. He just
they want the first year. They want rookie season. They want 1,700 yards, Zeke. Where I think, is it bad to say that he may have peaked? Maybe. But I feel like if you're giving me, like, because you mentioned last year, I think he had just above 1,200 yards from
12, 13,
1,200 yards from scrimmage and 13 touchdowns. And still the best run blocking or pass blocking running back in football. That's value. That's value. Now I don't think our issue is his value or does he bring value. I think it's the dollar amount that we're looking at. It's the dollar amount. It's the dollar amount. That's what it is for me. And I don't want this to be a whole cowboy thing.
Oh, and we can, right? If we have to. Like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, we need to move on. People watch. These guys are biased, right? They just want to talk Cowboys.
They want to talk Cowboys. But no, looking at the draft, I'm definitely looking at a pass rusher that I think they can possibly get at, or offensive tackle. Since they lost Lionel Collins, I'm gonna say Trevor Pennington, from Iowa. Yeah, from Iowa. I think he'll fill that void that they're missing at the tackle position with Collins. Collins, he was really good. He was really productive, but he had injury problems.
So do you have, really quick, not to cut you off, do you have Trevor Penning starting out at right tackle and eventually possibly transition into left?
Because Tyron Smith, he's banged up too as well.
He's done, man.
No, really. Yeah, I think his body can no longer play 16 games a year. That's just a fact. Like I don't even bet. I can bet on him not playing 16 games.
I can guarantee he'll miss 3 games a year.
He'll miss at least 3 games. So I do think that switch can happen. Mm-hmm. It can happen. I'm glad that you asked that, but I think it can happen. I think that's the route the Cowboys probably go to with offensive line. They could draft pass rusher since losing Randy Gregory, and I was so heartbroken because Randy Gregory, he had such a great year, and his personal off the field issues, he was able to overcome that, and he just had a really Pro Bowl caliber year, a really good year, and I'm glad he got his money. He's playing for Denver. He'd be able to compete at a high level. But boy, I just wish he could have remained a Cowboy. But I think that's where they go as far as drafting and who they draft in terms of offensive line.
Trevor Penning. Well, when I look at the Cowboys and just a quick overview of where they're at right now, we talked about the offense. They were, for the most part, the number 1 offense in the National Football League, especially towards the first half of the season. Tailored off a little bit. You guys have heard me talk about this on Rooter Sports before. A lot of it was because of Dak Prescott struggles, but it was a combination of Dak Prescott struggling and Kellen Moore just getting absolutely exposed by defensive coordinators early in the season. I don't know if they had that little segment about him running this no-name offense, this offense with no identity. They're not a running offense. They're not a passing offense. They're just a very versatile offense that can do everything great. Well, guess what? Once everybody started getting banged up and they couldn't run the football, all that shit shut down. It shut down, and then Kellen Moore got put in a position like, oh man, I got to scheme my wide receivers open now. Unfortunately, he just wasn't able to do that. Still young, still learning. But they have to rebuild and do some things on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I think that they're pretty good. I think that people are gonna call me crazy. I think without Randy Gregory, their arrow was still pointing upward. I think that they're still
Okay.
becoming the best. Because let's think about this: you lose Randy Gregory, but guess what? All you really have to do is get somebody that can really be that can give you something steady at linebacker, and you can
Mhm.
play Michael Parsons on the right
You can
side.
play Michael Parsons at that position.
And we can argue that Michael Parsons was the first or second best defensive player in the entire league last year.
I
That's a
thought he was the
fact.
best defensive player in football.
Exactly, I did too. I was amazed. I wasn't. You know me. I wasn't big on the Michael Parsons pick, so he
Yeah.
amazed me. He wowed me.
Mhm.
So I think their arrows still point upward defensively. They've resigned a lot of their guys, so there's not too many needs there. They'll address that later in the draft, second, third, fourth round.
Yeah.
But offensively, I think we got to take things back to the basics. Back to the basics. Kidding, my favorite song. Yeah, I think they have to start rebuilding that offensive line. It's time,
Yep.
and you have to start in the middle. Obviously, Tyler
Okay.
Biadasz, he's tried, he's done his best. But I think that there's a guy in this draft. His name is Tyler Lindenbaum from Iowa,
Okay.
and I've watched this kid's tape, and he is literally Jason Kelsey. Might be a little more athletic than Jason Kelsey. He
It's a
gets to
freak
the
show.
second freak show, undersized center, right? So he's sub 300. He's probably about 290, 295, 296, 6'2 guy. Doesn't have the longest arms, but when you watch him play, he's such a technician. He gets to the second level very fast. He's a relentless run blocker. And when you watch him in pass pro, he has very good anchor, very good balance, and just a very well refined guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a leader. He's a leader. He's a great locker room presence. He's a guy I think could go to that offensive line and kind of be the really call the shots and really be a leader day one. So I got Tyler Linderbaum. I think he would go there and pay immediate dividends for them, and he would be the first piece in them rebuilding that offensive line. I know we talk about tackle. Trust me, tackle's needed too. They're going to start Terrence Steele on the right side. All right, we can go ahead and agree with Terrence Steele.
Right.
He started. He's going to start on the. Yeah, he's going to start on the right side. And don't be surprised if they drafted a kid out of Marshall last year named Josh Ball, who was rated pretty high, and some people feel like he's a first round talent. Don't be surprised if you see him compete for the swing tackle spot and possibly be looked at as an eventual successor to Tyron Smith at left tackle. So they got a lot of good things working for him, but I think you gotta take things back to the basics. Get Tyler Linderbaum, put him in the middle, focus on the running game while you're trying to figure out things in the passing game, and I think that's going to give them the best chance to be successful.
Got it. I agree.
So that's Cowboys. Hey guys, I'm telling you this: if y'all let us go, we'll talk Cowboys all damn day.
Day.
Is this the Rooted in Sports show, or is this the Rooted in Cowboys show? No, it's the Rooted in Sports. So we're gonna jump on. So next we got the Philadelphia Eagles. They went 9-8. Yes. They were second in the NFC East, seventh in the NFC West. Big surprise playoff team. Isaiah, what do you think about them?
I think the state of the Philadelphia Eagles, they definitely surprised me. I did predictions before the season started. I thought they would be somewhat of a 5-win football team. I saw a first-year head coach in Nick Sirianni. I wasn't really too fond about. I saw his introductory press conference. He looked nervous. It was just Zoom computer screens. So I was like, I don't know. He looked nervous in front of Zoom. I can only imagine him in a locker room full of men. But it panned out. Philadelphia was a very physical team. They got back kind of strangely, not strangely, but they kind of got back to the style of football that they were playing when they won the Super Bowl, where defense and they ran the football. They ran the football. They became the best running football team in the league. And a lot of that had to do with Jalen Hurts. And I think a lot of going into last season, I thought a lot of people look in terms of the Eagles, they were looking at what Jalen Hurts was going to do. What type of improvement are we going to see that we're going to see from him? Because coming out of college, his days at Alabama and his days in Oklahoma. I think I've been watching this dude for a long time, and I think he's a great character guy. Like in terms of the intangibles and him saying all of the right stuff, Jalen Hurts has it. I love his story. I love him as a person.
Right.
But at Alabama, I had really, really troubling concerns about his down the field accuracy and him being a passer down the field and you know, on the outskirts in the between outside the white lines.
Right.
And it carried over to Oklahoma. And granted, he won a lot of college football games because he played at these great programs and played with these really great he played alongside these great coaches.
Right.
And I thought it was a telltale sign when Lincoln Riley was like halfway through his year at Oklahoma. He was like, okay, if you don't see the first read, if you can't see the first progression, take off and run with it. Do what you got to do. And it worked.
Right.
And the NFL shifting to going to that next level, obviously, it's going to take more than that. Right. And I must admit, I've been really hard on Jalen Hurts, but I do think there is something there. Now, I would like to see his completion percentage go up a bit. I'm going to try to pull it up, but I would like it to be in the range of like a 62, 63. And remember, there used to be like this whole thing about, and he finished with a 61 completion percentage. But remember the myth, or not the myth, but the saying, like, you know, accuracy is something that you can't improve upon. You either have it or don't.
No, that's a lie. Accuracy is literally a developed skill. It's not like something you're born with, unless you're a Hawkeye, right?
Right. And the prime example that I always use is Josh Allen. Josh Allen, Wyoming.
Yeah,
sporadic.
He's gotten very. He's really.
Now?
Yeah, he's deadly accurate now.
He's dead spot on accurate.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying Hurts has to make that type of improvement because Josh Allen he took a big leap, but Hurts 60%. It's a little low. It's a little lower than what you expect. But if he can raise it a little bit towards 64, 65, I'd take that as improvement. And that was the big thing with Philadelphia, the quarterback play. And then seeing some of the guys like Jalen Reagor, Devontae Smith, Heisman Trophy winner, they panned out. So, you know, I'm going to get your take on Philadelphia and the state of the Eagles.
Well, first of all, you mentioned Jalen Reagor, and man, if I was ever wrong, I was wrong on him because he just hasn't. I mean, I was watching his tape at TCU, and I'm like, man, this guy's going to be special. He looks like AB a little bit and just hasn't materialized. But you talk about Jalen Hurts. I've always had a lot of respect for Jalen Hurts. I don't think we've seen very many quarterbacks, especially guys that have always been 4 or 5 star prospects, handle that situation at Alabama the way he handled it. So he did really well this year. One thing I like, and I guess I can say this because I follow the Cowboys and I'm a big Dak Prescott fan. Jalen Hurts has phenomenal intangibles. And one thing about, you can tell that locker room loves him. They gravitate towards him. They'll run through the wall for him.
Absolutely.
The only thing is that front office just has to be patient with him. Really put all your resources into how can I make Jalen Hurts better. And the truth is based off of his work ethic, I think he is going to improve. I think you're going to see him grow as a passer this year. But Philadelphia as a whole, they're not in a bad spot. I like their team. I actually do, man. Once again, people are like, man, this is a Cowboys fan talking like this. Yeah, I like Philadelphia's team. I think they do a lot of things well. They have that running game with Jalen Hurts, Miles Sanders, Boston Scott.
Yes.
What's the name? Kenneth Gainwell. He has my first name, so I had to throw him out there. But they have a lot of good things working for him. I think Devontae Smith, in 2 or 3 years, people are going to be looking at Devontae Smith like, yo, this guy is pretty damn good. Yeah. I think I think he's quietly getting better and better. And he could become a pretty damn dominant receiver, if not this year, within the next two years. So a lot of good things working for him. They resigned a lot of their leaders, which I think is big. Jason Kelsey came back. Fletcher Cox came back. They released him and they brought him back. And then they have these young guys that are also growing as well. We know Avonte Maddox. I love Avonte Maddox. You can move him around. He can play outside, play slot. They brought Josh Sweat is actually becoming very good.
He's decent. He's a decent player.
I think we could see Josh Sweat get double-digit sacks this year.
Okay.
And then they, obviously they had the left tackle who was more of he was an international prospect.
Uh-huh.
What's his name? Jordan I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's
Yeah.
New Zealand guy, but he's become their franchise left tackle. He beat out Andre Diller. Andre Diller was a guy that drafted in the first round.
Right.
And and so he's
and you sort of had to move on Jason Peters.
Yeah,
and then Diller, we thought a lot of people thought Diller, okay, well, Peters is older in the vet. Diller can just come right in. No.
This kid Jordan Mata. I don't want to chop his name up, but he's taken the position as their franchise left tackle. Other positions, Dallas Goedert is quietly becoming. I think he's a top 10 tight end in the National Football League. And then obviously they have Quez Watkins at receiver, and once again Greg Ward, a lot of really really good pieces. They're not far off. They just have to continue building what they have. Nick Sirianni has a really good relationship and connection with all the guys in their locker room, so there is some good team chemistry going on there. When I looked in the draft, first of all, Philadelphia has an embarrassment of riches when it comes to draft capital this year. They have 3 picks in the top 20. They have 3 picks in the top 20. So I picked 3 guys that I thought would be a great fit for them and kind of help them turn the corner faster than not. And hell, maybe even compete for winning the division. One, I had them defensive end, Jermaine Johnson, FSU guy. Okay, good. You had him going there. Jermaine Johnson is a very interesting prospect. He kind of reminds me of Jason Pierre-Paul. Tall, lengthy guy. Long arms. He's a little bit more refined than Jason Pierre-Paul coming out. But if you look at their games, they're both guys that can play, that can pass rush, and that can stop the run equally as well. Jermaine Johnson is a very, very well-rounded player. Late riser. He had a dominant combine. People were impressed by his athleticism. He's a guy that's kind of shooting up draft boards late. You could see Philly possibly taking with their first pick or second pick if he falls. That's kind of the question. The second pick I have for them, they're gonna need to add a receiver outside of Devontae Smith.
Yep.
I think the Jalen Reagor experiment is done. I think you cut bait with them. You trade him somewhere where he can possibly start over and get a chance. I got him taking Garrett Wilson out of Ohio State.
Okay. So since we had the same first guy, Jermaine Johnson, and we're thinking on the same wavelength, I think their second pick along with you, it should be a receiver, because we see the Rager thing hasn't really panned out, right?
No, it hasn't.
I have them taking Chris Olave from Ohio State, but go ahead.
And you wouldn't be wrong for that. I think Chris Olave is more pro ready than Garrett Wilson.
Yes.
I think when I look at Philadelphia's how can I say this? When I look at their penchant for drafting, I think they're going to go after the guy that has the higher upside. Garrett Wilson's very athletic. He's freakishly athletic.
Yes.
And I think that he's the guy that if he can put it together, he can be really dangerous. And he's a little more versatile. You can do more things with Garrett Wilson than you can with Chris Olave.
Yeah.
So I think you implement him in that offense. You use him on jet sweeps and stuff like that. Design wide receiver screens, all this stuff, right? I think you have a lot more versatility with Garrett Wilson. So I see him possibly going there. With their third pick, I have them taking Nakobe Dean from Georgia. I think they're missing, they have for years, they're missing that marquee linebacker that can lead their defense. Nakobe Dean is still developing. But he's kind of like, I don't know if you remember Ernie Sims from Detroit. He's like Ernie Sims from Detroit. Super uber athletic, run and hit linebacker with some coverage ability. Still developing instinctual wise. I think he can still develop his instincts. But I mean, this guy ran I want to say he ran a sub 4.5 40. Just everywhere. You watch his highlight tape, you're wondering, am I watching a safety or am I watching a linebacker?
Yeah.
And I think that's a compliment on his side. So I think Nakobe Dean would go there with some of the big bodies they got on front. He would give them some really much needed playmaking ability at the linebacker position. So those are my 3 picks for them.
I'm not mad at that. At that last pick, I know our first 2 picks were very similar, damn near the same. So I like them having taking with their first out of 3, first round picks. I do like Jermaine Johnson out of FSU. I think the JPP comparison, the comp, that's a really good comp. I was trying to find a comp for him, because I couldn't really put my finger on it once I put his name.
Because he's so rare. He's so rare.
Yeah, but that's a good comp. So I like him out of FSU. And then you mentioned them taking receiver, and the Eagles, until Devontae Smith, they haven't really drafted receiver well.
No, they haven't. And the crazy part is they've skipped over guys that are considered
Justin
amongst
Jefferson,
the best.
CeeDee Lamb.
DK Metcalf. We jumped him for CeeDee Lamb,
right.
But they drafted JJ Arcega-Whiteside over DK Metcalf.
Yeah. Who did they draft? They drafted Rager over Jefferson, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the luck hasn't been on their side
at all.
Now, as you mentioned, Garrett Wilson I think athletically, he's a bit, you can do more with him than Olave, but I haven't taken Olave. I think they want a guy that's going to be more pro ready. Right. I think Olave, I've been following him since he's been at Ohio State. He's playing some big time games.
He's a stud.
He can play. The dude can play. And I think that's a really good pairing with Devontae Smith, Olave. You have a guy that is going to be ready to play. You have a guy that can potentially get you 50, depending on his role. He can get you 50 receptions as a rookie. Depending on his role, he can get you 50 to 60 receptions as a rookie. And then their last pick, their third pick in the first round, I like Devontae Wyatt out of Georgia. Defensive end and defensive tackle. I think he can be interchangeable. In my opinion, about 6'3", 300 pounds. But we just talked about the Eagles bringing back some of their leaders, and one of those guys being Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox, they brought him back. They released him, and they brought him back on a more team-friendly deal. And Cox, I think he's 31, but he's turning 32.
Right.
So his prime days may be, they may be expiring sooner than later, per se. So I think I think the move for a guy like Devontae Wyatt I think it'd be a pretty good move. You're looking at a guy, I think Wyatt, he's a hybrid. He gives me the
flexibility,
the impression and the flexibility of him being a hybrid, and that's why I say defensive tackle or defensive end.
And you know what's funny? There are people in the draft. There are people in NFL front offices that believe that Devontae Wyatt is the better of the two compared to Jordan Davis. They think Jordan Davis is probably a little closer to his ceiling, where Devontae Wyatt could possibly turn into close to an all-pro guy.
All-pro type of guy.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you, we're talking about these Georgia kids. I'll tell you who is quietly looking fucking special, man. I watched this tape. That Travon Walker kid is special.
Really?
Oh, he's special.
I gotta watch more.
You gotta watch him. He's a hybrid. We're talking about hybrids. He's a true hybrid. He's 275. Mm-hmm. He's a freak athlete. I think he ran a 4.445 at the combine.
That's insane.
But he's a guy that actually got more inside snaps. And you're watching him, you're like, yo, this guy could be a 4-3 base in or a 3-4-5 technique, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. He's a kid that is going to be the first out of all of those three. He'll be the first one drafted now. First, it was, okay, is Travon Walker going to be a second-round pick? Now he's going to be a top 10 pick.
Right.
Yeah. So,
no doubt.
Yeah, so Georgia put out some hogs. I got to give y'all credit. I got a lot of homeboys that are Georgia fans. I talk trash to y'all, but Travon Walker, Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, you guys are putting out some studs, some good products. So, yeah, that is my picks for the Eagles. Once again, they're headed in the right direction. They can compete for the division this year. I think they commit to Jalen Hurts. Quick segue or quick fun fact. I don't know if people know this. Philadelphia was actually chasing Deshaun Watson. And if I'm not mistaken, Deshaun Watson denied them out of respect for Jalen Hurts.
That's what's up.
He told them that they had no chance of signing him out of respect to Jalen Hurts. And that is a fun, especially as a black man. That's a fun, phenomenal thing to watch and to see one guy supporting another. So I think they have the same quarterback coach. They train with the same
quarterback coach. Yeah. Quarterback coach is really, his name is slipping out of my mind. It's the tip of my tongue, but really
Yeah.
good quarterback coach. Yes.
Yeah, so he trains both of them in kind. So that is Philadelphia. Now we got Washington. They went 7-10 last year, third in the NFC East. And to tell you the truth, I'm gonna tell you this, man. A lot of people are down on Washington. They actually weren't far. Okay, so let me go ahead and state this for anybody that's watching. The NFC least, that's over. That ended last year.
Yes.
That ended last year. The NFC East put 2 teams in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And 3, Washington, the beginning of December, Washington was well into playoff contention.
They were hot. They were
hot. And Washington smacked this Tampa Bay team that y'all feel like that can win the NFC or second behind the Rams. They smacked them around last year.
And they keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. So Washington is quietly very good. I think they're average. I think they struggle with some injuries. Obviously, Chase Young got hurt early on, but we've seen them try to make some improvements offensively. Taylor Heineke came in, did his best. I mean,
I was going to say they have lost. Well, you continue giving like the recap of their season.
Well, no, I mean they try to do some things offensively. Taylor Heineke tried, but I think you start to see a little bit of his limitations as a quarterback. They had guys that were inconsistent. Antonio Gibson, who people had, this guy's gonna be, even though his statistics went up a little bit, you really started to see him struggle in big moments in big games. He fumbled the ball a lot.
Yeah.
And he kind of took a step backwards as far as from an impact standpoint goes. His stats went up, his impact went down. So I think they have a lot of great nuclear. Antonio Gibson's still young. Defensively, they kind of have a new guard. They let Landon Collins go. They asked him to take a pay cut. He said no. So I think Washington's headed in the right direction. What do you think about them?
I echo the sentiments you talked about in terms of their season last year. I thought they were quietly good towards the back end of the year. They took a hit with some of these injuries. You mentioned Chase Young, even Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I wasn't necessarily high on, but he was supposed to be like
magic.
Yeah, he was supposed to bring that magic, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of Washington, I look at this offseason. They lost Morgan Moses,
right,
and Brandon Sheriff. So I thought that was 2 of their better, especially Brandon Sheriff. I thought that was 2 of their better offensive linemen that they lost. Mm-hmm. And you look at they bring in Carson Wentz. Now we were just talking about Atlanta. We were just talking about Matt Ryan going to this nice Indianapolis squad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about the quarterback that had this same Indianapolis squad, Carson Wentz. And as you mentioned, this is the same guy that thinks that Colin Cowherd thinks is better than Dak. That's neither here nor there. It still blows my mind that Carson Wentz is. Can we both agree that this is his last opportunity at being like a starter?
Absolutely. His career as a starting quarterback is literally everything's riding on this. If he's
dependent on this year. And nobody's going to convince me otherwise in terms of what he had last year. I'm talking about arguably the best offensive line in football. Everybody continues to rave. And you know what people said when he was stuck in Philadelphia? Well, get him Frank Reich. Remember what he did in 2017? Get him Frank Reich. Well, he gave him Frank Reich. Carson Wentz.
And he still struggled.
So in the weapons, as far as like the pass catching guys, weren't phenomenal. But I like Michael Pittman. I think he could be.
Michael Pittman he may be a lower end number 1, but he's a number 1 in this league. He's number 1 receiver. I think he had 1,000 yards receiving.
Right. I like Mo Ali Cox, who they re-signed. T.Y. Hill. So he had pieces and players to play with. Oh, not to mention he only had Jonathan Taylor, who only ran through the league. So on top of the defense that he had, and he played in a weak division AFC South. So when I look at certain guys and when I hear certain people talk about Carson Wentz, I'm like, he just had a stacked Indianapolis squad and couldn't beat Jacksonville to advance to the playoffs. So in terms of the quarterback thing, what Washington did, they swallowed his salary. they gave up what they gave up, but I think the biggest thing is they swallowed the salary and the contract and the money that he was making. And I just thought that was a big no-no.
Well, once again, to look at what Carson Wentz did in Indy, it's funny. People look at his touchdown to interception ratio and they're like, "Oh my gosh, he actually played pretty good."
He played pretty
good.
What
the thing is I've mentioned this and I've talked about this before. There were times in Indy where they really, as a matter of fact, they really were handling Carson Wentz towards the back end of the season, maybe the second half. They were handling him with kid gloves because they realized like, okay, we don't want to put too much on this guy because he's prone to make bad decisions and turn the ball over. So, obviously Jonathan Taylor was phenomenal. He picked up where I said this. He picked up where Derrick Henry. It's almost like Derrick Henry got hurt. He passed the baton to Jonathan Taylor, and he just said, "Okay, I'm the best running back in the game now."
Yeah.
So it wasn't like there was an immense amount of pressure on Carson Wentz. Now, the issue is at some point, and Frank Reich said this, there's going to come a time where Carson Wentz is going to have to win some games for us. He said this. Yeah. Frank Reich, it literally is quoted as saying this. And he wasn't able to deliver when they needed him because the biggest question was, okay, well, Jonathan Taylor in this running game is dominant right now. What's going to happen when it's that rainy day where he only rushes for 50, 60 yards?
Yep.
Right. And he's only averaging 3.2 yards per carry. What are we going to do then? And the thing about Carson Wentz is he just wasn't able to deliver in those moments. And based off outside of that, his play, I've heard that he wasn't very, there were some questions about him in the locker room, intangible wise, leadership wise, and not the coaching staff. The owner, Jim Irsay, was ready to get rid of him.
Yeah.
So that it speaks volumes. This is a guy that's really on the last legs of his career. I've said it before and I said it again. He is talented. He's immensely talented. I'm not going to take that away from him. I think that he has the potential to be very, very good. But you guys, they were drafted in 2016. It's 2022. They've been elite. They're entering year 7 now, right?
Yeah.
Is it year 7?
Yeah.
So they're not kids anymore, They're getting closer to. It's kind of like when you get to a certain age, like, hey, once you hit this age, like you are who you are. Like there's not really much changing. Yeah, so that's where Carson Wentz is. His starting career is kind of in a flux. We'll see what happens. And plus, you got Taylor Heineke, a guy who's not special, but a guy that locker room really loves. And that can be dangerous for Carson Wentz because he's not a very big intangible guy, and he's not a guy in the locker room that guys that are ready to die for and run to a wall for. That was evident in Philadelphia. They love Nick Foles' dirty draws there.
Let me tell you this. Shout out to my guy Ron. Carson Wentz was so bad. The coach the Indianapolis, they traded him and had no type of viable backup plan in terms of who they was gonna get as their quarterback.
This is true.
Like until the Matt Ryan thing popped up, they didn't know who their quarterback was gonna be. But he was so bad down the stretch, they moved off of him. Wentz was so bad for the Eagles that the team was willing to eat the biggest dead cap money hit in NFL history just to get rid of him.
They said, we just want you gone. I say this, Indy was a playoff team that didn't make the playoffs.
Definitely.
And to tell you the truth, it wasn't like a lot was demanded of Carson Wentz all season. He only needed to show up for about 2 or 3 games. All he needed was 2 or 3 games where he played to his talent, and they would be in the playoffs and possibly be a very dangerous team in the AFC gauntlet. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that, and they were like, "You got to go, bro. Like, if you can't mess with this." So, yeah. So, and you'll see the difference with Matt Ryan this year. I think Matt Ryan's going to go there and give them stability. Like, that's why, they wanted – they didn't – when Phillip Rivers retired, Indy didn't want Phillip Rivers to retire.
Right.
They were like, whoa, like, what are you doing?
Whoa, this is out of nowhere.
Yeah, Well, I mean, obviously he was getting up there in age, but they were like, we thought we was going to run this back. So they're getting another veteran guy that's around the same way. I think Matt Ryan is in that era. You kind of get guys that, okay, they're where John Elway was in 97, 98, where they're no longer this just transcendent passer, but they're still pretty damn good. They have great knowledge of the game. So Carson Wentz to Washington. I'm interested to see how it works. Granted, he has a little bit more receiving talent. I'm not confident in the offensive line. I think he's gonna struggle. So you might see him get happy feet, throw some picks. And as much as I like Antonio Gibson, I don't think Antonio Gibson's a guy, okay, I'm going to hand the ball off to Antonio Gibson 25, 30 times a game, and he's going to dominate. I don't think he's that
He's
type of
not
guy.
Jonathan Taylor. Right.
He's not that type of guy. So you just went from having the most dominant rushing attack and having less pressure on you to now you're in a position where with a bad offensive line, a rebuilding offensive line, and a above average running back and a slightly above average running game, and you're saying, okay, we need you to win with this. So that's where the question mark comes in. I don't know how good Carson Wentz is going to be. I'll be honest, as a Dallas fan, I see Dallas sacking him 5 to 6 times per game and really rattling him. And that's not even to mention the other teams in the division. So I don't think the pick's going to work out, or the transaction is going to work out. And I think we could see Carson Wentz, unfortunately, possibly holding the clipboard in 2 years.
Yeah. In terms of who I think Washington is going to draft, really quickly, I like Charles Cross from Mississippi State, offensive tackle. I think in terms of Washington, like in terms of having offensive success, and I think both of us kind of preach this and agree with it. In terms of having offensive success, I don't care what type of team you want to be. I don't care if you want to be a team that wants to run the football and be physical. I don't care if you want to be a team that want to be finesse and throw a bunch of vertical routes down the field. If you want to, I don't know if you want to be Philadelphia, or I don't know if you want to be Kansas City. But you gotta have a strong offensive line. So I think Charles Cross, he has really good feet. He played in the SEC, so like he's seen top tier pass rushers and defensive ends every other week, every other Saturday. He's been playing that. He's been playing against that. Or I'm looking at a guy like Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame at the safety spot for Washington. So that's those
in the first.
Yeah. It's a bit. I think that's more of a reach. At safety.
Oh, you're talking about the safety from Notre Dame.
The safety for Notre Dame. Oh,
okay.
I think for Washington they can go a couple ways. I feel like they can go DB too with Derek Stingley. I don't know if he's going to be there at 11.
I think he's I think he is probably one of those guys, because he's had health issues, that if you want a great corner, he's going to fall to you. I think he can fall to anybody within the top 15, top 20.
Right. So I think Washington could go a couple different ways, but I think I like Charles Cross from Mississippi State.
When looking at who I had them drafting, since we're talking about offensive line, I said they need to rebuild it. I actually had them taking Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M to replace Brandon Scherf. Okay. He's this thick, powerful, multifaceted. Anybody that's watched Kenyon Green at Texas A&M, he's played tackle, he's played guard, he's played center, he's played every position, literally on that offensive line. And obviously, he's made his money at offensive guard. But he's got, I think they could bring in day one. He's a really good run blocker. He can do some decent things. He's still proven pass pro wise, but run blocking is kind of where he makes his money. And I think Antonio Gibson would like that pick, but I think he would come in and kind of, obviously it's a tall task asking to be Brandon Scherf. Brandon Scherf's an all pro, it's essentially Hall of Fame caliber type of guy.
Yes.
But Kenyon Green can come in there, and I think he's a Pro Bowl talent. I think that highly of Kenyon Green, so much that some people have Kenyon Green fall into Dallas, right, to 24. So, yeah, Kenyon Green from Texas A&M, offensive guard. Was he 6'2", no, he's like 6'4", 320 pounds. Very solid guy. I think he'll give them some stability at the offensive guard spot, and possibly – maybe if they decide to go that way, maybe flex him to right tackle and something like that if they need to, and they can move him around because he's played every position on that offensive line. So that is Washington. The Washington Commanders, new name, right? Kind of ugly, but I guess we'll get used to it. A lot of talent in the front seven. Defensively, they have some good things going.
Yeah.
We'll see what they do in the draft. I think Washington has always been a boom or bust team. Either they're really bad or they're really good. There's never been a medium, right?
Right.
So we'll see what happens from them. So that is the Washington football team, or the Washington Commanders. Now we have the New York Giants, right? New
York football Giants.
4-13. They were fourth in the NFC East, and I'm going to tell you this: they were actually, you may call me crazy on this, they were my biggest disappointment of 2021.
Really?
Yeah, I thought they had a very well constructed roster. You look at them defensively, based off of what they did a year before with Graham at defensive coordinator.
Mhm.
Um, Man, they were a top essentially they were a top 10 unit defensively.
Yeah.
And on the offensive side of the ball, they added all this talent. I mean, we're talking about they signed Kenny Galladay. They get Saquon Barkley back. They still got Evan Ingram. They draft a kid out of Florida, the wide receiver number 89 out of Florida. They
Uh,
still
I forgot his name.
Kadarius Toney.
Tony. Yeah, yeah,
Kadarius Toney. They
yeah.
still have Darius Slayton, who was there, who was making his mark, being like
Mhm.
a sub number one, but really more of a number two guy.
Number
They
two,
still
really.
had number two. They still had Sterling Shepard, right? They
Mhm.
had all these guys. They signed John Ross on a flyer, and I
Yeah.
looked at this team and I said, man, they can be really goddamn good. I didn't hate people. Some people had questions about him. I actually liked Joe Judge. I thought Joe Judge actually was doing some things for them from a cultural standpoint that was possibly making some progress, but it didn't work out. Obviously, it went south and they lost a lot of football games. What is your thoughts on the New York Giants?
I kind of understand why you probably thought they were the biggest disappointment in football last year, or maybe in the conference or so forth. One of the bigger disappointments in the league. But a part of me understand that portion, but a part of me also kind of figure like this could go very downhill, especially with the quarterback play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not too fond of Daniel Jones. Never have been really. I think as an athlete, he's really good. Like, he's a good athlete, but I just feel like he lacks so many things. The pocket presence. I think some of the pocket presence definitely, because it's a reason why he leads the league, or he has led the league in fumbles since he's entered it for a quarterback, because his pocket presence, he lacks that. He lacks that. So I'm looking at a guy and Daniel Jones where I'm ready to cut bait. I'm almost ready to cut bait with him. I thought with with a little bit of improved offensive line, with Saquon coming back, and with the weapons that you mentioned on the outside, I thought that would help raise his ceiling. It didn't. It didn't. And the Giants offensively, they were just anemic of doing anything well offensively. Honestly, I can't name one thing that they did well on offense. I can't. Like, even the Saquon, people now, I used to say it back then when Saquon got drafted, before the draft, Saquon, the scouts and so many analysts.
He was the second coming.
He was, oh my goodness. He could walk on water.
He was the second coming.
I mean, people was giving him the gold jacket. People was talking about his body. He has thighs, his thighs. I'm like, what does that have to do with him being a really good running back? Who cares about how big his thighs are? But I just heard so much nonsense, and they took him at 2, and people frown upon the Cowboys taking Zeke at 4. And I'm like, Giants took Saquon at 2. And for me, with Saquon, he is this guy that's like home run or bust. He's either gonna break a 60-yard run.
You're gonna 1 yard or 1 yard,
and then the rest of those 13 to 15 carries, you'll be good. He getting 2-3 yards, but it's not like it's not consistent with him. He's definitely like that baseball hitter where like it's home run, or he's striking out. He's striking out. And with the Giants, I just feel like they offensively, that was the biggest thing. That was the biggest challenge.
So, all right. So, I'm not as down on Daniel Jones as you are. I've watched Daniel. I've watched. I'm down.
I'm sorry.
I've watched Daniel Jones flash. I actually think he still has some meat left on the bone. I think he still has a lot of meat left on the bone. Okay. And he's getting a guy in Brian Daboll who did a very good job at developing Josh Allen. And anyone that knows me knows that I wasn't a big Josh. I thought Josh Allen, and I think I can say this, guys, forgive me. I thought Josh Allen was going to be another line of a big white boy quarterback that had a big, strong arm that came into the league and failed. He played at Wyoming. He didn't have an exciting year. His last year at Wyoming, which is a lower level competition wise. He didn't look great.
Didn't look good.
So he was a guy that was a big ball of clay that they really had to develop and bring along. But Brian Daboll did a very good job of that. And obviously that front office did a good job at bringing in talent to surround him by. Now, that being said, with Daniel Jones, the truth is, you guys, all he needs is some confidence. I think Daniel Jones right now, and you guys are going to hate me for this comp, but I think Daniel Jones is where Alex Smith was before Jim Harbaugh got there. I'm not saying Brian Daboll's Jim Harbaugh, but you watch Alex Smith before Jim Harbaugh got there. He had been there for 7 years, had 7 different offensive coordinators, and he couldn't find his footing. Flash at times. He had times where he flashed. We're like, hey, Alex Smith can be pretty goddamn good. Yeah. But all he needed was that one head coach, that one guy to come in and give him the confidence and say, you can do this shit. And from there, it turned around, and we can go ahead and say, we're not saying he's a Hall of Famer, but Alex Smith went on to have a very productive career. Exactly. And essentially become a respected quarterback. Not a Hall of Famer, but a respected guy. Now, for Daniel Jones, I think Daniel Jones is in a better position to where Alex Smith was because he's younger and he has a lot more talent around him, i.e. Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, Kenny Golladay, and Saquon Barkley. But so I'm not as down on this team. I think they should trade Saquon Barkley. As a matter of fact, I heard you mention his name. I think you get rid of him. You see what you can get draft capital wise. You see if you can get a player because he's a guy you don't need a Saquon Barkley at running back. You need a guy that's going to be a tough, hard-nosed, bell cow type of runner. That's not who Saquon Barkley is. Saquon Barkley is an exciting. He's a guy you can move around your system. I would love to see Saquon Barkley play for the Rams. I think he'd do dividends for him, right? I mean, pay him mid dividends. I think Sean McVay get excited, move around this, that, and third. But you need for that team, especially it's New York, cold weather, East Coast state, blue collar. You need a guy that's going to come in, is going to run the football hard, not going to be pretty about it, that's going to pass block, going to stick his nose in there. Saquon, go ahead.
I'm going to say, I'm glad you said that because anytime the Giants have had success, it's a formula. It's they're tough, they're rough, they're rugged. I remember the days of Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. And those guys, those were hard downhill runners. Wasn't avoiding any type of contact. So I totally agree with that point.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're not far from being a team that can compete. I mean, hey, don't be surprised if they surprise. Don't be surprised if they shock people this year and are productive and win a couple football games. So, I mean, once again, they're really not far. I like where they are defensively. I think they have some improvement to do. They still have some solid pieces in the secondary. Jabril Cox. They lost Logan Ryan though, but Jabril Cox and I guess I'm looking at who they got at corner. They got Adoree Jackson at corner, and now they're looking at trading Bradbury. Right, they could possibly trade him or whatever. So they still have some solid pieces there. Now, when I looked at draft, obviously, they have 2 drafts. They have 2 picks in the first 15.
Okay.
So I looked at for their 5th pick, I had them taking Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon. I think he will be the perfect guy to pair across from because they drafted a kid out of Georgia last year. Let me make sure I'm pronouncing his name right. Azeez Ojulari.
Okay.
Right, who actually led them in sacks as a rookie, right? He had 7.5 sacks and looked pretty goddamn good doing it. So I think that if you pair Kayvon Thibodeau with him, they still have some very exciting pieces on the inside. Leonard Williams, and once again, it's another defensive tackle that they drafted out of Clemson not too long ago. But the pieces are there. They to go ahead and turn around and compete. So Kayvon Thibodeau with their 5th pick. Their 2nd pick, I think Andrew Thomas is settled at left tackle. I think he's continuously getting better. I think you go and you take Evan Neal with their 2nd first-round pick. I want to say he's 7th or 8th. That's their 2nd first-round pick. You take Evan Neal, 6'8", 350 pounds, Alabama guy. Now, everyone knows this. Alabama usually has – more times than not, very overrated offensive linemen. A lot of them don't transition well into the National Football League.
Who was the guy that the Raiders drafted that I was not high on at all?
Alex Leatherwood.
Alex Leatherwood, I thought they
Alex,
reached for him.
it was a reach. Alex Leatherwood, a guy who struggled, and they had him playing tackle and some guard. But I mean, the list goes on. Alabama has all these guys. Oh, he's physical. Oh, he's very talented. A lot of them come in. Chance Warmack, DJ Fluker, Cam Robinson. A lot of these guys come in are either subpar or just terrible. I think Evan Neal, I watched his tape. I think he's a better right tackle than left tackle. People are trying to gas him as a left tackle. I just don't see that working. I think for the Giants, you keep Andrew Thomas at left tackle, you draft Evan Neal, put him at right tackle, and one thing, if he can't do shit else, he's gonna be able to run block, and I think that's where they want to improve at. They maybe look at some running back, either they trade or they look at some running backs in the second or third round, and possibly bring a guy in that could kind of be their bell cow guy. So those are the two picks I got for him: Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon and Evan Neal out of Alabama.
Kayvon Thibodeau is not a bad pick. Could he be there? I think the Giants, their first pick is at 5. He could be there at 5. I'm thinking with the mindset that he's not going to probably be there at 5. So I said with the 5th pick, I think they take Evan Neal. Mountain man. He'll cover the sun if if you're standing by.
He's a big guy. Yeah, he's a big guy.
Yeah. So I think I would definitely take him. Like you mentioned his measurables: 6'8", 350. All meat and potatoes. I mean, it's just it's amazing to see what he can do. I do, like you said, if he can't do anything else, he'll run block.
He'll run block.
He'll be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
The left tackle thing, I have seen, like I was reading up on him, and I have seen like people say, "Oh, left tackle," and I think they take like the size and the measurables, and they're like, "Oh, you can just take him at left tackle." And I'm like, I don't know. I don't quite see left tackle. I don't see the agility. Like, I don't see enough agility and like side to side movement for left tackle for Evan Neal.
Left tackle is you have to have a high IQ and you have to be a plus athlete to play left tackle. Yes. A lot of people don't realize this. Left tackle is not a walk in the park at left tackle. So most guys you see that are successful, very dominant left tackles, they have a high football IQ, and usually they have a very nice refined technique, i.e. a David Bakhtiari or a Joe Thomas, right, or a Tyron Smith when he's healthy, or this year Trent Williams for San Francisco.
Trent Williams, Lord, freak show,
exactly.
I think so that's the type of versatility, especially in today's game offensively. The mere fact, the way you saw Kyle Shanahan moving Trent Williams as if Trent Williams was like a tight end or fullback. It's incredible.
Putting him at fullback, putting him at H-back. I'm like, come on, Kyle Shanahan. Come on now.
Like, it's
just showing out.
This showing off the offensive genius and whiz. But I think that gives you a little bit of the insight. And Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, these guys are always typically first to a trend offensively. So if they're doing that now, I would imagine that's where I see the position left tackle. Like you said, you got to have IQ and you have to be athletic. You got to be an athletic freak show. And I think so. If you're going, the prototypical, the quintessential left tackle that you want is a guy that can move around and be versatile. And then at that second pick that they have in the first round, I'm looking at a guy that you already talked about, Trayvon Walker. I'm looking. I think that would be a pretty good pick for the Giants at defensive line. So that's who I have the Giants taking with their second first round pick, Trayvon Walker out of Georgia.
So you have them going defense back to back?
Yeah.
Which isn't bad.
Defense. Well, no. Evan Neal, offensive line
at 5.
At 5, and then Trayvon Walker. At
7.
At 7, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think they're 7. Yeah, they have 5 and 7. Yeah, no, I mean, hey, it's not a bad pick. They don't have. You guys are gonna call me crazy, especially last year. The Giants quietly probably had one of the more complete rosters in football. All they were really missing was a plus pass rusher. which I think Azeez Ojulari is kind of developing into. He has 7.58 sacks as a rookie. Once again, imagine you add in a Kayvon Thibodeau, who I think is a seven
Yeah.
to eight sack per guy as a rookie. I think you can do that as a rookie, possibly 10. We'll see what happens. But they're not far from competing, from being a team that can really kind of make some noise. So I'm excited to see what they do. They had some exciting wins last year. I think they beat, if I'm not mistaken, the Giants beat the Raiders, didn't they?
Yes.
They beat the Raiders, who Dallas lost to, right? And the Raiders were a playoff team. They beat some playoff teams. So good things going on. I think the biggest question for them is what is Brian Daboll going to look like as a head coach?
Yes.
What he's going to put in place offensively?
How does he help Daniel Jones?
How does he help Daniel Jones? And I think that's going to speak dividends. But one thing, you may see Daniel Jones run a little more. You may see him use Daniel Jones' athleticism, because obviously Josh Allen is the only goddamn quarterback I've seen, outside of Cam Newton in his prime, but that design QB runs. I'm like, this shit is ridiculous. This is absolutely
like QB sweeps.
It's asinine. I'm like, man, you guys are really running QB runs, right? A QB run. So Brian Daboll does that a lot. Obviously, Daniel Jones is actually pretty athletic. He's not a guy that's just like a statue or anything like that. So I think the whole NFC East is actually very talented. They all have the position to win football games. They're not the NFC least anymore. And for anybody that's watching, we talk about the NFC least. You guys, the NFC North and the NFC South are fucking terrible.
Kenneth,
they're terrible.
Kenneth, I made the same point towards the back end of the season. And I'm like, okay, we keep bashing the Cowboys because they play in the NFC East. They play in the NFC.
NFC North. Tampa Bay literally played in one of the worst divisions and still got swept by the Saints.
Like, do you not see the NFC North? Green Bay wins when healthy. Whenever Aaron Rodgers is healthy, Green Bay wins that division like it's nothing. The Chicago Bears are in utter rebuild mode and always usually underachieving. The Vikings, they're massively underachieving. Then Detroit Lions. Come on.
Yeah, no, terrible division. So the NFC East as a whole, I think it's coming along. Don't be surprised if you see hopefully the Giants take a step up, but it's going to be competitive as always. Even if the teams are bad, it's always competitive. It's always exciting. A lot of parity. But I think you might see them as a whole win more football games as a division and kind of move up that ranking and become a lot better. What were you about to say?
The NFC East is, speaking of parity and competitiveness, they haven't had a back-to-back winner. Check me if I'm correct, if I'm wrong.
Since 2005? Yeah, something like that. It was Philadelphia.
I think it was Philadelphia going to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, with Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb.
So that speaks to that's almost 17 years of parity and a different team winning the division. Hopefully the Cowboys can break that streak.
Hopefully they can. If not, it's the National Football League. I love seeing an underdog. So here's the thing: the Cowboys fan of me wants to see the Cowboys repeat. I think they can, but the football fan of me wants to see Washington, New York, or Philly kind of figure things out and put a decent team together and make a run. So I'm excited for what the NFC East has to hold. I think it's going to be more competitive than people probably anticipate, but I still got them putting out two playoff. I think I have them putting out two playoff teams again this year. I don't know who it's going to be. It could be Dallas and Philly. It could be Dallas and Washington. Hell, it could be Philly and Washington. We do not know. But I think it's going to be competitive nonetheless, and I'm excited to see what that holds. But that is it, you guys. That was hour 1 and hour 2 of Rooted in Sports podcast. You guys were with us. We had a couple people chime in and stuff like that, give us some good feedback. So I hope you guys had fun. Isaiah, I had fun. What did you think? This was. I was able to get you on. Did you enjoy hanging out and talking to your guy Kenneth today, our King Tiberius?
No. I definitely enjoyed it, Kenny. Anytime you need me to come on and talk some sports, talk football, basketball, it doesn't matter. So Sunday night, Sunday morning, Monday morning, it doesn't matter. I do it with you anytime. But definitely, I was glad to be on the Rooted in Sports podcast. We're doing it live. So I can't really complain. Just thank you for the opportunity for letting me come on and talk to sports with you.
And first of all, hey guys, check out the Isaiah Kit podcast. I know it's on Apple. What other platforms are you on, brother?
It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. It's essentially everywhere. Anywhere you think anywhere you download or stream your podcast, it's there. It's there. So check that out for sure. Thank you for that. Thank you.
The Isaiah Kit podcast. And if anybody else knows, Isaiah Kit is a regular on Rooted in Sports community. We're on Twitter Spaces every Saturday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So yeah, like I said, that was it. Today was a very productive day. We talked about March Madness and the many upsets, mainly Gonzaga and Arizona, because those are the two teams I had the championship. We talked about whether the Memphis Grizzlies were a legitimate team in the Western Conference, which we're kind of leaning towards they probably are, but obviously they're a young team, so a lot of questions. And we were able to talk some NFL free agency, right? Talked about some low risk, high reward players and signings. Right, and then we went ahead. We did our Rooted in Football segment, and we covered the NFC East and talked about every team and who they should draft and kind of where they're going from here on out. But once again, you guys, thanks for tuning in. It's exciting. We'll be back next Sunday. We're gonna throw a little survey out, and you guys feel free to comment. I want to know if you guys like Sundays. We're considering Fridays too. Right. But at the same time, we want to know what you guys as the listeners, as the viewers want. Would you guys rather Sunday evenings or would you rather Friday evenings? Let us know. Either way it goes, we're open to making the necessary adjustments. We just want to make sure we put out the best product possible. So this is the Rooted in Sports podcast with King Tiberius. We had our guest Isaiah Kit on, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you.